most underreported, underdiscussed, yet biggest story happening in Kansas City, and it needs to be getting more attention. And that is, who is going to be the next city manager in this town? They had final round interviews late last week, and they did not go well. Hope you're doing well. Happy Monday. I'm not trying to bring you the bad news as we kick off a week here, but I had a lot of time over the weekend to listen to these interviews of these finalists and these candidates. And they are not exactly knocking it out of the park. I took a trip to Boston over the weekend, not even 48 hours, to visit my brother. I had layovers in St. Louis both ways. I'll talk about that airport here coming up in a few minutes. What a mess.
Please do.
I will. Don't worry. But I had time to sit there on my phone and listen to the interviews of Kimiko Gilmore, who is right now the interim city manager in Kansas City. Mario Vasquez. I keep wanting to call this guy Mario Lopez, but he's Mario Vasquez. And then Pat Klein. They all are working for or have worked for the city of Kansas City, Missouri at one point or another. And they're your three finalists for this job. So remember last week when we had the mayor on Thursday, he talked about the interviews that would be airing on YouTube. And let's be honest, no one watches this stuff, okay? I just watch it after the fact because it's part of the job, duty calls. And it is an incredibly important hire. Remember, Brian Platt got canned over that, bizarre mistrusting the media story that turned out in a lawsuit from an employee who was looking for revenge. And we talked about that ad nauseum over the last couple of months. So now you got a World Cup coming next year. You got a city that's, let's be honest, facing a lot of issues. And the city manager plays a big part in that. Now, they don't run the police department, but listen, they make sure your trash is picked up. They make sure your roads are cleaned. They're a big role in economic development, which will move the city forward. So this is a big job. They elected to keep this thing internal because, well, the reality is this city council is done in a couple of years. And if the new mayor wants to move on with a new city manager, he or she will have the right to do that one day. So they rightfully didn't want to open this thing up to a big national search. They wanted to keep it internal and keep the process moving. The problem is the front runner in the clubhouse is Kimiko Gilmore. And if you watch that interview from late last week, it is Kamala Harris-esque with the word salads. Now, I didn't think any of them knocked it out of the park. But if this is your front runner in the clubhouse, it's not a good sign. It is not a good sign for the city when the person who many on the council are lobbying for to be the next city manager is talking about homelessness in Kansas City and called the homeless. Remember when we were dealing with this during and after COVID, when we were putting homeless people into hotels in and around Kansas City? Well, the interim city manager, who is the leader right now in the clubhouse, called that a success.
Any arena. So once I came back to the city as assistant city manager and deputy city manager, one of the areas that I had to cover was houselessness. And that's
a red flag right there, all right? It's houselessness. We went from vagrants to homeless to, now we keep making up a new iteration of the word. Okay, but anyway, I can get past that. I can get past it, all right? I'll survive. I'll make it.
It was a ride that I will never, ever forget. Because we as staff and the community and some in the community had come together and had a plan for how to address houselessness. We were in COVID at one point, and there were hotels involved, and we housed people for the entire summer, and that was a win.
No. That was not a win. That wasn't. Don't forget, when that was going on, 2021, remember the city spent millions of dollars putting homeless people into hotels. Many of them were actually up in the Northland. What happened? The crime around these motels and hotels skyrocketed. That was not a win.
Prom weekend or something,
You had catalytic converters getting stolen left and right. There was nothing about that was a win. Nothing. It cost millions of dollars. Now, the city was living high in the hog, as were all cities, because, well, COVID money was here. You had, of course, the ridiculous woke fallout from 2020, where there was this belief that, we're just going to spend government money on putting people in hotels for 30 days. And amazingly, it accomplished absolutely nothing. Yeah, because that's not the problem. The problem is deeper than putting a roof over somebody's head, right? There are oftentimes mental health issues. There are long-term, deep-seated issues that these individuals are obviously dealing with. And just saying we're going to fill up a hotel or a motel for 30 days does nothing but Band-Aid a massive wound that needs serious surgery. That's all you're doing. So anytime I'm sitting there in the St. Louis airport yesterday, and I'm, minding my own business, and I'm sure the people around me saw me like jump out of my seat and start talking to myself because I heard that, and I'm like, what? I probably looked like one of the crazy homeless people up in the Northland 3 years ago in the hotels. I'm like talking to myself, what are you saying that was a massive win? Nothing about that was a win. And I don't want to say any line is disqualifying for any one person for the city manager job, but I'll tell you right now, you cannot have somebody who is saying that was a successful venture for Kansas City, Missouri, John. It's bizarre.
Houselessness, have we used that word, right?
Yes.
With two prefixes or
Yes.
suffixes?
Yes.
I don't know if that counts on Wheel of Fortune or anything. You might have to watch out.
Well, we could maybe...
But it's not an issue about houses, real quick. I'll interject. Anybody building homes in Kansas City will say, hey, I'll build you a home. Just remove these ridiculous restrictions. But that's a sidebar conversation.
Well, you're right about that, too. That's something that when we did our Politics in a Pint last time with Mayor Lucas about, 2 years ago now, we had multiple people from that community say, hey, the problem with Kansas City and its housing issue is that the red tape is absurd. It takes forever to get through City Hall. And on top of that, the amount of regulations we have to deal with, far more than Overland Park, Lee Summit, and so many other places around Kansas City. So that's another one of the issues when it comes to the homeless crisis that Kansas City is facing.
I would think any earnest attempt to rectify that situation would include that.
Yeah, you would think so. So I hear some of this interview for Kimiko Gilmore, and I'm like, okay, this is not starting off well. Then I see this question or hear this question. This was earlier in the interview, so I was just getting kind of worked up. What's the most significant challenge Kansas City is facing?
Will be the most significant challenge as city manager for our city.
That's a good question and a loaded question and a question that can go in a lot of different ways.
Okay. Oh, dang it. I hit the wrong button. I'm going to have to play that again. That is like the most obvious question to ask a city manager in an interview. Hey, what's the most important issue facing this city? Well, that's a loaded question and an important question, and it can go in a lot of different ways. All right, Kamala, give me the answer. Please. I just need an answer here. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. That's not a suitable answer here. I don't need the word salad. What is the issue? Come on.
Will be the most significant challenge as city manager for our city.
That's a good question and a loaded question and a question that can go in a lot of different ways. And so I just want to start with just the basics. One of the challenges that we are having right now as a city is retaining our workforce or even attracting a workforce. And in positions like, the entry-level positions, maintenance mechanics, at the convention and entertainment facilities, since I was appointed as executive director, we have had at least 13 maintenance mechanics positions open. And we had a huge career fair. And everyone, I think Public Works got 200 people, and all of these other water had a lot of folks. But we hired one person. And that is not acceptable. So we have to figure out how we are going to attract the workforce and retain the workforce that we need to get the job done. Now, we still get the job done, but I want our staff to be able to work smarter and not harder.
What? The most pressing issue is you had a bad job fair? So what's the structural analysis of that? Is it a compensation issue? Is it a, engagement issue? Is it an issue with the city? Is it an issue with the department? I mean, what's the problem? You're in the interim role. That's Kimiko Gilmore, who is probably the front runner to be the next city manager. But you ask, what is the biggest and most significant challenge as city manager for the city? And frankly, you get a bunch of word salad gobbledygook that ends up talking about a job fair where one person was hired. Well, why did that happen? And then in that comment, you see, so we have to figure out how we're going to attract the workforce and retain the workforce. I mean, that's kind of your job, to answer why you have not been able to attract the workforce and what you're going to do to bring in an improved workforce and a larger workforce. Not to say we've got to analyze it. I mean, that's literally your job. That's why you're being hired. So listen, I don't have a dog in the fight. I really don't. I mean, I watched the interviews with, and I don't think this guy, Patrick Klein, has a shot. Apparently, he's not all that loved, to put it politely. Mario Lopez Vasquez, I'm hearing that people are liking him more and more. He's better one-on-one. I watched his interview. He looked really nervous. He had some decent answers, but he looked and came across really nervous. And Kimiko Gilmore is the one who many at City Hall are lobbying for to get the job. She's the interim person right now. But I'm sorry, based on what I'm hearing, I mean, are you going to feel like this city's in a great spot going into a World Cup next year with some of these answers you're hearing? I don't know how you could. So I don't know who the person's going to be. Like I said, I'm hearing a lot of shift towards Vasquez behind the scenes internally, and maybe that comes to fruition. But I also know that the deck is stacked in favor of Gilmore. And if she gets the job, I will wish her and want her to do the best job that she can for Kansas City, because that's ultimately what this is about, doing a great job on behalf of this city. It's nothing personal, but I'm just telling you, because I know nobody listens to these interviews. And frankly, if I was not traveling this weekend, I'm not sure I would have listened to these interviews. But I had some time on my hands, and I said, you know what? I'll pull up these city manager interviews from late last week here in Kansas City, and I'm glad I did. I am glad I did, because I guarantee you most people in Kansas City media didn't watch 7 seconds of these interviews because they're long, they're drawn out, they're largely boring, but they will play an enormous role in who ends up being in charge in this town for the foreseeable future. So as this, and I'm going to invite all three people on the show. I also have heard that City Communications has been stacking the deck towards one person. I will report back on that this week after I start reaching out to get some of these folks on the show as we head down the home stretch. 913-408-7957. I will give you an analysis of our regional airports and something that needs to happen as soon as possible. It is my message to the major airlines in and around Kansas City and around the country, coming up on a Monday morning on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio, and streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
A little Cinco de Mayo music there, Mark. Nice job there, buddy. Good morning. 623. Great to have you here on KCMO. We just got done talking about city manager hiring, which right now is down to 3 finalists inside of Kansas City. KCMO Gilmore is the interim candidate. They all interviewed late last week. I listened to those interviews as I was traveling over the weekend to and from Boston, caught a Red Sox game, stopped by Harvard, and I stopped by. I looked for the anti-Semitism protests, but couldn't find them. Either way, Tim's in Kansas City. What's up, Tim? You're on KCMO. Go ahead, buddy.
Hello?
Hey, Tim, what's going on, man? Go ahead.
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to comment on the thing you said about Kamiko and her answer for the one question that was asked about the problem with the city. And I work in the aviation department at the Kansas City Airport, or the main airport, and we can't get anybody, and we need people really bad. I mean, they opened up the new terminal. They have all this extra area that we have to take care of. I work in field maintenance, and we are having a hell of a time trying to find anybody that wants to even apply for a job. They, and I think the biggest hindrance for that is you have to live in the city limits, and nobody wants to relocate to Kansas City, especially if you live in one of the small towns around here. I mean, God, we got crime and everything else, and the politics are terrible. And so why would people want to move to Kansas City, just to work there? And then again, they don't pay very good either. So it's, they need to, pay us better. So, I mean, it's like,
yeah, well, Tim, you should have answered the question for her. I mean, let's be honest. You could have said, listen, but here's the thing. The city government does not want to encourage, the cops got away with it, but they do not want to encourage people to be able to live outside of Kansas City and then work for Kansas City, Missouri, because that helps their tax base. It helps them politically. But you're right. That would go a long way. Just an easy step number one.
Well, there's a shortage of people all over. Nobody wants to work for the wages that they pay. I mean, the only reason I'm here is mostly for the benefits.
Yeah.
And so, it's like they're shooting themselves in the foot because we really need to get rid of that city requirement.
I agree. I agree.
It's the worst thing.
Tim, thank you, buddy. Hang tight today, all right?
All right.
I appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
That's good stuff out of Tim, who works up there at the airport, and I appreciate him sharing that. Here's the problem. You can't get hired as city manager if you say we should drop the residency requirement. You just can't. But she could have said what Tim said there. We got to have more competitive pay. We got openings all over town. And if we are going to require people to live here, to work here, then we got to give them some incentive. If you've got a mortgage right now, why are you going to leave from outside of Kansas City limits to come inside of Kansas City limits? Now, if you're renting, you're single, fine. But if you've got kids in school, even if you're not a homeowner, picking up and moving back into Kansas City to then go work at the airport, to Tim's point, not a lot of people are going to be in line to do that in a tight job market. Not going to happen. Now, speaking of the airport, I was up there Friday and then again yesterday, went to visit my brother in Boston, caught a Red Sox game, and had a great time. Transferred both ways in St. Louis because there were more flights from St. Louis to Boston, obviously, than Kansas City. And I don't know why, but it's past time with our new airport for all of these major airlines, Delta, Southwest, American, United, go down the list, to start using Kansas City for more of their connecting flights than St. Louis, because the St. Louis airport is dingy, it's aged, it's washed up, it's tight. The workers, frankly, are not pleasant at all in St. Louis. I mean, there's no redeeming qualities about that airport, John. And if I'm one of these airlines, I am looking to do more connecting flights in and out of our airport than using that airport.
Planes, trains, and automobiles. Steve Martin trying to rent the vehicle and climb over that overpass. That's Lambert.
Yeah. I was sitting there. I sat there for 4 hours yesterday. My flight got delayed by 2 hours coming back. I'm like, this place sucks. I'm sorry, it's terrible. There's no redeeming qualities to the St. Louis airport. It's like they're doing you a favor as you sit there as the customer for the better part of, 4 hours. So if I could change one thing about the airline industry, you guys got to start using Kansas City as more of your hub. We've got the room, as I understand it. They built it out for some room. And the food options are better. The people are nicer. Amenities are better. There's more space. Everything that you would want is better at our airport than the St. Louis airport. Coming up on KCMO Talk Radio, another Doge cut for Kansas City. We'll tell you what next.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
What are we going to do without a $200,000 grant for Powell Gardens in Kingsville, Missouri, in the Kansas City region? What are we going to do, and how are we going to make it? I know you're sitting there and you're like, well, we're $36 trillion in debt. I mean, it's like in your home. If you are running a deficit every month in your house, I'm sorry, but you can't eat out 5 times a week. I mean, you can, but eventually you're going to find yourself in a lot of credit card debt, and you're going to have to pay it back. I know there are those who think that our $36 trillion in debt is just like a made-up number that doesn't really matter, and there's no impact on me today, so why do I care? But eventually, the chicken will come home to roost. And that's why you've got people like Trump and Elon and so many others with Doge who are serious, thank goodness, for the first time in a long time, about caring about the issue. But that doesn't stop your local media here in Kansas City on a Monday morning from trying to do everything it can to drum up, I don't want to use the word hate, but let's just say animosity towards those who are trying to be responsible with our money. It's not even our money anymore at this point. It's our grandkids' money. So Woke 41 does a piece, Powell Gardens to pause certain programs after loss of federal grant. Says here that Powell Gardens was awarded a $217,000 grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, expected to be dispersed over 2 years. After 1 year of funding, the grant has been pulled. And that's, of course, because there is just cutting going on around the federal government. Here's how Woke 41 reported this over the weekend.
So the grant paid for things like HR support, safety training, community outreach, behind-the-scenes work that visitors don't see. But CEO Cody Jolliffe says visitors will still notice changes. So fewer staff, maybe fewer programs, special events, a lot of the work that they say makes Powell Gardens visitor ready.
A lot of the things that makes a cultural organization great that people don't see that has to happen every day. So it's not the paint, it's not the beautiful flowers, it's the things that are harder to get funded.
Another problem is that Powell Gardens' budget is set years in advance. So without those federal dollars, they expect they'll have to cut back on programs that the grant was supposed to fund. And when I spoke to those leaders there, they said they really right now just want people to know how this is impacting, know that they need the community's help. Absolutely. And really the ways that they'll see this hurt them.
Oh, really? Okay. I mean, in a perfect world, sure, Powell Gardens would, I suppose, have every dollar it would like from grant monies. But we don't have it. We don't. And I don't think that this level of local propaganda is going to work to make people say, you know what? I was on board with Doge, but once they went after that $200,000 grant against Powell Gardens, I'm out. I'm done. This is it. This is where I put my foot down and I say enough is enough.
I'm getting pissed now.
That's right. You went after Powell Gardens. You got something else coming for you, Elon. Come on, please. I mean,
come on, man.
Even Biden's like, you got to be kidding me with this. So you heard from Cody Jolliffe there, CEO of Powell Gardens. And this quote from Sharon Ramsey, Director of Development for Powell Gardens, did not make the Woke 41 package, but it was in the article. And her quote reads as follows. A lot of people think that we receive public funding, but we do not receive any tax dollars. So we rely solely on dollars coming from admissions, membership, and from donations from individuals and grants that we have applied for. Excuse me, what do you think grant money is? That is just a lie. I mean, at the very best, if you want to be generous and not call it a lie, that is at the very best not being honest. Oh, we don't receive tax dollars. We don't get public funding. We just get grant money that we applied for, which is government money, which is our money from the taxpayer. I mean, please, at least tell me why this is really important, why we should fund this. Like, I don't mind that. Everyone should advocate for their organization. I get that. Like, I really do. But then to have the director of development come out at Powell Gardens here and say like, oh, we don't get taxpayer dollars. We just apply for grants, which is taxpayer dollars, is just disingenuous. I mean, come on. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining with something like that. That was where I said to myself, you know, I can let it slide. I'm cool with it. I understand you want to lobby for your organization to have as much money as possible, but that's where you got to draw the line. And frankly, your local news should do a much better job calling that out for what it is and be like, well, explain to me why you getting grant money is all that different from taxpayer dollars, because it's basically one and the same. And we all know that. Jim's out east. Go ahead, Jim. You're on KCMO. What's up, buddy?
Well, Pete, did I hear you right that they've already received half of it? So we're not looking at $200,000 being cut. We're only to $105,000 or so.
Yeah, true. It's $217,000 over 2 years, and they got 1 year of funding. So they got, like you said, about $108,000, give or take.
So we're not looking at $200,000 cut.
Correct. Good point. Excellent early morning Monday analysis there, Jim. Nice job, buddy.
All right, Pete.
Hey,
have a good day.
You got it. You got it, bro. Well done. That's outstanding. You're right about that. So this is the kind of stuff that local media is driving home to try to create a political narrative that doesn't really exist. And please tell me the people who are going to, be outraged over Powell Gardens, ask them how many times they've been there. I mean, I have not been there once in my life. Going on 8 years now. Mark, you've been here? You've been there before, Mark, Powell Gardens?
I have not.
Okay. John?
65 years and counting.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook. I marked myself safe from Doge cuts at Powell Gardens.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you very much. That's kind of what I wanted to know. And it's not that I want anybody to lose a job. I don't. But, I mean, if this is the stretch that your local media is trying to reach for, to be like, go against Elon and go against Doge, I don't think it's going to work the way you think it's going to work. Okay? I really don't. The text line, 913-408-7957. That's also where you can find us on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. Pete, there is no way that Powell Gardens could ever fund itself through just admissions. They would have to get an enormous amount on donations. Here's the thing. You just need one big donor, theoretically, right, to justify keeping Powell Gardens going. That's what you would need. I mean, same thing with PBS, NPR. And I guarantee you, just because of the political climate we find ourselves in out of spite, you could probably find some rich lefty to write that $100,000 check for Powell Gardens in a heartbeat. I guarantee you that person exists. If nothing else, to spite Elon. Now, will it work for the long haul? I don't know. But I guarantee you could find that donor right now. And then you would save the taxpayer money, and then Powell Gardens could stay open. Great. That makes all the sense in the world. But when it comes to how your media is covering this stuff, just know it is wildly disingenuous, whether it's on the national level or right here in Kansas City. 0 for 3 on this show on Powell Gardens. And you tell me, I'm not seeing any texts saying that some of you are, staples there. I didn't think so. Pete, if you chaperone one of your girls' school field trips, you'll go to Powell Gardens. All right, great. I look forward to it one day. Mark, none of your girls went to Powell Gardens yet?
No, not if you live on the Kansas side.
Yeah, maybe they'll go down to the Johnson County Botanical.
Yeah, we went to the Deanna Rose Farmstead.
Oh, that's always a good trip. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. I've been there. Our girls have been there multiple times on their own because we see value in it. They like the animals. They like to feed the animals, the whole thing, right? How many times can I look at butterflies? Just saying. That's just me. Coming up, the 6 at 6, top 6 stories in the 6 o'clock hour we will get to here on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and streaming, as always, on that KCMO Talk Radio app. If you are sitting there on a Monday morning and you're like, uh-oh, I got a leak, I need a plumber, you know how overwhelming that can be, right? But what if I told you there's a locally owned business in Kansas City since 1978 that could check off every box that you want? Reliability, professionalism, quality workmanship, transparency, and customer service. Well, the best company for you is The Plumbing Pro here in Kansas City. I know Steve, I know his team, and I can promise you that they will check off each one of those boxes for you here in Kansas City. It's the only way you can survive 50 years in Kansas City, nearly 50. I don't want to age them. Nearly 50 years while still being locally owned and locally operated. That is exactly what they do well at The Plumbing Pro. You got Kansas City folks who are going to take great care of you. So when you need a plumber, go to theplumbingpro.com. That's the best way to get a hold of them. The website, theplumbingpro.com. So whether you're leaking, clogged, or dripping, and let's be honest, we've all been there, you can rely on The Plumbing Pro. Go to the website, theplumbingpro.com.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM.
Song always reminds me of Wedding Singer. Good morning. I think it's when Adam Sandler's stumbling back drunk one night after he gets dumped for like the third time. So it is great to be here. Happy Monday. Glad you're starting the week with us on KCMO. Let's do it.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on 95.7 KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Start with a tragedy that we are following here. U.S. Highway 169 closed in Franklin County between Anderson and Miami counties on the Kansas side following a crash involving multiple fatalities, according to the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. This was late last night. Several local first responder agencies responded to the scene. Kansas Highway Patrol is leading that investigation and will release additional information as it becomes available. Someone once told me this, and I looked it up, and all I could find was the most dangerous roads in every state. And in Kansas, it came away with Interstate 70, obviously, in terms of most fatalities per year. But when you do it based off of how much traffic a road gets, apparently Highway 169 on the Kansas side is one of the most dangerous roads in the entire region because it kind of, weaves back and forth. It's, once again, not Highway 69, 169 is one of the most dangerous roads, and not just the region, but, the entire, I guess you would call it Midwest. So that obviously is something that we'll follow and keep an eye on here in the hours ahead. And just so you know, Google AI confirmed it. So Google would never be wrong, right? Google would never let us down. But Google says here, U.S. Highway 169 in Kansas has a history of fatal crashes, with some stretches considered particularly dangerous. So just know, I try to avoid it. I'll just take 69 highway and then try to find an east-west road from there if I got to go out that way. But that happened last night, and we'll update you as that story gets updated here on KCMO Talk Radio.
Number 2.
Well, this over the weekend was a surprise. Warren Buffett announcing he's going to retire as chief executive of Berkshire Hathaway at the end of the year. Warren Buffett is 94 years old. The Oracle of Omaha. Mark's the Oracle of Olathe. Warren Buffett is the Oracle of Omaha. So he built Berkshire Hathaway, and it is now a juggernaut worth over $8 trillion. He is considered the world's most successful investor. And for those of you wondering, the guy is piling up cash right now. Make of that what you will. But he is considered the world's fourth wealthiest person, a net worth of $154 billion. He earned his first money as a 6-year-old, bought his first shares at 11, and filed his first tax return at 13 years old. And this is my favorite part of Warren Buffett's story. Despite being one of the richest people in the world, Warren Buffett has lived in the same modest house in Omaha for more than 65 years. It's amazing.
My grandparents lived about a neighborhood over from, so we'd go over there during Christmas time and look at the Christmas lights over there.
Have you seen Warren's house?
Yeah.
Is
it's behind a little bit of a fence now, but, it was still just, it's not huge. It's a nice house.
Yeah, but it's modest for a man who's the fourth richest guy in the world.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing. That's my favorite part of the Warren Buffett story, that this guy has stayed in the same modest house, because you can't buy the memories, you can't buy the happiness, and that part of Warren Buffett I just love, absolutely love.
Number 3.
Next up, let's stick it with the markets here. So did you know all this fear-mongering as of mid-April? The S&P closed Friday with a 9-day winning streak. Where were the headline stories from CNN and NPR and everybody else talking about how the markets had a huge swing to wrap up the month of April into early May? I might have missed the stories, but man, I didn't see them, John.
Yeah, we're working on the Powell Gardens expose here anyway.
Yeah. You're right. So right now, Dow futures are off about 280 points. S&P is down 50. NASDAQ is off just over 1%, with the stock market set to open up for the week in about 90 minutes. So the 9-day winning streak may end today, but either way, it has been a great run. And I guarantee you the headlines today are going to be, whoa, the market's 9-day winning streak ends. They didn't write about the market having a 9-day winning streak, but they will write about the market ending a 9-day winning streak if it does end up down today.
Number 4.
Next up in the 6 at 6, speaking of big money, it's not Warren Buffett money, but last night the Chiefs officially signed their first-round draft pick Josh Simmons to a $14.68 million deal, 4 years. He was, of course, an offensive tackle from Ohio State, picked with the 32nd overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. And I was at Fenway Park on Saturday. I went to visit my brother for a couple of days, went to a Red Sox game. And I wore a Harrison Butker jersey to the game to see if I was going to get a bunch of crap. First guy to come up to me, standing behind me in line for a beer, taps me on the shoulder. He's like, "Great jersey, bro." Gives me a pound. He was from Poplar Bluff. He had spent most of his life in now Eastern Ohio. He was in Boston for business, and he wanted to go to Fenway Park. So he's an Ohio State fan. And he goes, "Man, this guy Josh Simmons, we stole him." He was raving about Simmons. He goes, "I saw this guy at Ohio State, man, top 10 talent," all the things that Mark was telling us over the last few weeks. But the Ohio State fan who I bumped into at Fenway just confirmed it there, Mark. So know that you are in good company, brother. All right? You're in very good company.
It's good news.
Yes, it is. Simmons officially signed last night.
Number 5.
Well, speaking of the Chiefs, there is some drama. People are wondering whether or not Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce will be seen together at the Met Gala in New York City. That is what the Swifties are freaking out over right now. There are potential rumors that Travis and Taylor may be engaged. Maybe they broke up. Nobody's seen them together in months. And tonight would be an opportunity for them to potentially show up together and put those rumors to rest. So that is what is happening tonight. The Met Gala in New York City, considered fashion's biggest night. And there is a hope that the couple will show up together tonight on the red carpet. What are you laughing at in there? Why do you find that so funny?
Travis and his fashion. He's never been to this Met Gala, but I know he wants to go so
he
bad.
probably wants this more than he wants another Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on now. You're right. I agree.
Number 6.
Last for the 6 at 6, the Royals are still red hot. After losing Friday night, first game of the series to the O's, which also was the end of Bobby Witt Jr.'s 22-game hit streak, they won their last 2 in Baltimore, including yesterday's 11-6 win over the O's. And now they come back home and they start a series tonight against the White Sox. They have taken 11 of their last 13 games. The Royals are rolling, baby. Coming up, you might have seen just the headline stories yesterday. Will Donald Trump uphold the Constitution? It was so disingenuous, and we have the receipts coming up next. 7:05, good morning. Happy Monday. Glad you're here with us on KCMO Talk Radio. Beautiful morning. I missed what was an incredible weather weekend in this town. Took a 48-hour, not even, like 38-hour trip to Boston, visit my brother. He's been up there several years. I have not had a chance to see him up there because he moved up there the same month that Claire was born, and I've had 3 kids since then, and it's not exactly easy to be like, yeah, sure, I'm going to head out there for a weekend. So I missed a couple of soccer games, but as the assistant coach, they were A-OK. Girls won. I know you were very concerned, Mark, but the girls remain undefeated in the kindergarten soccer league. So they are destined for the World Cup. Oh, I know. They were Ric Flairing it left and right from what I heard yesterday. But they made it without me. It's kind of a miracle. But either way, I get to St. Louis yesterday, pop open my laptop, had a layover there that was supposed to be 2 hours. Turned into a 4-hour layover. Man, that St. Louis airport just blows. It really is just the worst. These major airlines should start doing more connecting flights in Kansas City. Food's better, people are nicer, better amenities, better bathrooms, everything here in Kansas City. But anyway, pop open the laptop, start scanning through the news, and I see that Trump was on Meet the Press yesterday with Kristen Welker. And the top headline story, the top trending story, was Trump saying he doesn't know if he must uphold the Constitution. So I have this app or this website I use that kind of aggregates all these different news stories to kind of see what's trending. I mean, you can get this on social media, but it's this website I use called Topic Pulse. And the top story in every category is Trump saying he doesn't know if he's going to uphold the Constitution. And I'm like, oh, boy, here we go. Dictator at large. Let's go. Well, of course, it was largely BS. Although I will say Trump's not the best at answering some of these questions, which is why I don't understand why he does some of these interviews. I think he enjoys it. I think he gets off on the idea of sparring with these people, like ABC's Terry Moran last week and Kristen Welker on Meet the Press. But knowing full well they're going to take a soundbite and then use it as a headline, and most people are just going to see the headline and keep moving. Say, there he is, Dictator Trump. So this is NBC News' headline. Trump, asked if he has to uphold the Constitution, says, quote, I don't know. That's the headline NBC News ran. USA Today runs this headline. Trump says, quote, I don't know, end quote, when asked if he must uphold the Constitution. So 99% of people are not going to bother actually reading the story and looking for context. We're too busy. There's too much media being thrown at us. People don't want to know the why. They don't want the details. And coincidentally enough, I've been reading this book for a while. It's called Trust Me, I'm Lying. And I finished it. I was traveling, so I had a lot of time to read, which I never have at home. So I finally finished this book called Trust Me, I'm Lying. And it's how to manipulate the media. And I thought that for my job, I'm not trying to manipulate anybody. I'm here. I got an opinion. You can call up the show, call us out on it, disagree, agree, whatever it might be. But I wanted to get a behind-the-scenes look on how social media has helped mainstream media influence and manipulate an entire, not just country in our case, but frankly, the world. And it was a fascinating read. And it ties perfectly into this story and how the president of the United States says something, they run a headline, most people forget reading the story, are not even going to search out the clip, and are just going to use that headline to confirm their bias against somebody, in this case, President Trump. So here's the short clip of Trump that was making some of the rounds, and then I'll play the long clip for you in terms of what he said about the Constitution, and the context was related to, of course, the left's new George Floyd, and that is Kilmore Abrego Garcia, the man who is down in the El Salvadoran prison.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me. And they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Trump says, I've got the lawyers who are going to follow what the Supreme Court said. Now, was the I don't know clip maybe a little mistake? Sure. But in the context there, and that's the short clip. I've got the long clip here coming up. The short clip there, he even says, I've got the best lawyers who are going to follow the Supreme Court. Here's the long clip. This is the longer back and forth between Kristen Welker, Meet the Press, and President Trump yesterday on the Kilmore-Abrego-Garcia situation, which drove all the headlines yesterday and into this morning of Trump saying he's not going to follow or I don't know was his quote, if he's going to follow the Constitution.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know.
as
It seems it might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. Some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Is anyone in your administration right now in contact with El Salvador about returning Abrego Garcia to the United States?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the Attorney General that question.
So by Trump's standards, you hear that full minute-long clip, and he's really deflecting. He's saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. That's up to the DOJ. That's up to the attorneys. They'll work this out. But listen, I was elected to, in part, deport 10, 15, 20, whatever the number is. I was elected in part to deport millions of people that Joe Biden, my predecessor, illegally allowed into the country. You're not going to get 2 million court cases here, okay? That's his broader point. Now, is there a slip-up saying, I don't know? Sure. In a perfect world, does Trump say, of course our plan is to follow the Constitution, and that's what our attorneys are working on right now? Yes. That's probably the best answer. And then that ties into the second part of this. There's no doubt, as this text came in here from 2499. Pete, this is why mainstream media will go the way of the National Enquirer, junk news. Content creators on Rumble is where I get all my news, and of course, on your show. Well, that's very nice. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Such a nice man.
And I'm glad you're here on KCMO. But the other element and the other angle, as I just flipped to CNN and I see them talking about this, Trump and the Constitution with New York Governor Kathy Hochul, that's awfully rich. As much as Trump is funny in these interviews, as much as he is good for those of us who do this for a living, I do wonder if a part of him should just say, you know, I'll give these people their gaggles. I'll do the media gaggles when, like, he just talks to the press openly from the Oval Office. But giving NBC an exclusive, boosting their ratings, and then giving, like, CNN, MSNBC, and all the others 24 hours of fodder to hit me over one quote that they largely take out of context. Am I doing myself any favors by doing that? That's I think, a fair question to internally ask. Now, Susie, while no one's going to tell Trump what interviews to do and what interviews not to do, he's going to do what he wants to do. But I do wonder if he were to just take a step back and say, you know what? These people are never going to give me a fair shot. They're always going to skew what I say. And they're going to take a one quote out of context and turn it into a 24-hour news cycle. So in which case, how am I benefiting myself here? I'm not saying the guy should be Joe Biden and never do an interview. That's not what I'm saying. But he's done a lot of these over the last couple of weeks. He's done The Atlantic, the written piece. He's done Meet the Press over the weekend. He did ABC last week. And at some point you say, am I hitting a point of diminishing returns, knowing full well one quote will be taken wildly out of context and turned into a 24-hour media news cycle? I would cut a lot of these out if I was him. I would. I think he enjoys them too much. And I think a part of him thinks that they don't really hurt him. And maybe they don't. Maybe just, people on both sides take him at face value for what they are. But at the same time, if I'm trying to win people over, why am I bothering with Kristen Welker? What am I getting out of that? 913-408-7957. I just want to hear from you because I know a lot of you obviously support this guy. Would you back off on some of the interviews, or would you just say keep them going? I don't care. Beat these people up. Of course, figuratively speaking, we're having too good of a time. Real quick, John in Green Valley. Go ahead, buddy.
Pete, I got to agree and to disagree. Yeah, I agree Trump needs to work his messaging. I get it, but that's not Trump. So I disagree. No, keep doing these because just like you showed, let me play the whole interview. And there's enough, finger quote, alternative media sources, unquote, who now will do the whole 1 minute and show the hypocrisy, show the stupidity.
Here's the problem, John, the problem is the people who need to get the context behind the quotes are never going to search for it. Never.
No, that's the beauty of it. Let them lay in their own.
No, it's not the beauty of it if it causes you to lose elections, though, right?
Here's the thing. Trump is a one in a lifetime. I can't see J.D. Vance doing this. I don't see anybody on the horizon who could do it like he does. But if you can keep pointing out the foolishness, maybe that works.
Yeah, I hope so. I'd love for that to be the case, John. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I do.
Do you hear the responses of an individual who thinks he's in a one-on-one interview and answering as himself versus that bluster that he does when he's doing the presidential thing? I don't know if he kind of slipped mentally into that. We're just talking here. It's just me, Donald, and you, not the president.
Maybe. Yeah, that could be part of it. I'm not saying it's not. I just wonder what the value is.
Agreed.
And that's the question that needs to be asked here. What is the inherent value of deciding to go down that road, right? And take that approach? Guy's not wrong. Not wrong. But if you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm doing a lot of things. A lot of people are going to go against me because of just who I am. The media is 92% against me. That's the figure that came out last week. 92% of his media coverage has been negative. Why would I give these people more ammunition knowing how disingenuous they are going to be about it? And it's something internally they should be asking themselves, because now you get 24-hour news cycle of Trump doesn't know if he's going to uphold the Constitution. Dictator! Oh, my gosh. Please stop.
Fake news.
I know. Scott Faughn will be here, 8 o'clock, Missouri Times on KCMO Talk Radio. We got the good, the bad, and the ugly this hour as well. Great to be back with you on a Monday morning on KCMO.
Dave Ramsey here, and you're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now airing on FM at 95.7.
Got to find the whole story, man. You got to do it. 913-4087-957. I didn't even know that O'Reilly was going to dig into that Kilmar Abrego story, but it ties into what we were just talking about. And that was the president's interview on Meet the Press. The headline that comes out of it for most national media outlets is Trump says he doesn't know if he's going to follow the Constitution regarding Kilmar Abrego Garcia taken out of context. John's in Topeka. What's up, John? You're on KCMO.
Morning, Pete. Hey, my neighbor, he's 86 years old, and that's all he gets. See nightly news and CBS. And so here I am, the good neighbor that says, hey, you've been lied to and they're manipulating you. And I show him the rest of the story are different things. And he was a Democrat, and now he's an independent because of me. And the fact is that if it wasn't for me showing him bald-headed dudes wearing lipstick and dresses and stealing suitcases from airports, he'd be like, what? Because he's like, he never heard that. I was like, yeah, this guy is in the Biden administration. I said, this other guy is in the Biden administration. And I showed him the rest of the story. He's like, oh, my gosh. I said, yeah, this is who you got running the country. And he was like, oh, no. And he didn't never see any of that on the mainstream media, but I showed him. And so there's a lot of people out there that they don't get the rest of the story because nobody takes the time to explain to them, hey, this is what's really actually happening. So,
that is great, John. And I hope you turned him on to the show in 95.7 FM.
Oh, yeah. I told him, I said, you need to listen to Pete. Everybody needs to listen to Pete in the morning. It's just entertaining and it's informative.
Yeah.
And it's absolute truth because you guys don't stay on the radio and you don't have your job if you lie. I mean, if you lie, you lose everybody. So you can't lie. You got to give us the truth, and it's got to be accurate and on time.
Yeah.
And that's the truth, because if you don't, then you'll lose everybody.
Thank you, John. I'm glad you turned over that neighbor to 95.7 FM. Good work, buddy. I appreciate that. Very, very nice of you.
Such a nice man.
Yes. Well done there, John. Excellent. As always. I see, that is also why the polling would suggest that the age demographic that is most against Trump is 65 plus, partially because of what John just mentioned there. An older demographic is less likely to find media information that is not being fed from, the nightly news, right? And that the polling came out, last week, 2 weeks ago, and it showed that. The most anti-Trump age demographic is 65 plus, which is a total about-face from where politics was even 15 years ago. It's fascinating stuff. News is 2 minutes away. And when we come back, a Doge employee writes an opinion for the Kansas City Star. I can't imagine where this is going. We'll tell you next.
From the nation's heartland, it's Mundo in the Morning on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio.
Can you really damage Social Security any more than it already is? I mean, the thing's going to be insolvent, according to estimations, in the next decade or so. So I'm just curious on a Monday morning, how much worse can it really get? This was a special to the Kansas City Star yesterday by a guy named Max Sloan. I mean, I'm going to assume Mac's a guy. I guess you can't be too certain these days, especially when you're running a special for the Kansas City Star. But anyway, Mac writes a piece here, headline, quote, "I'm a KC Social Security worker. DOGE has already damaged the program's future." Bro, the program's future has been damaged for decades. That's the problem with it. Okay? It's going to be insolvent. It is a Ponzi scheme at its very core. And if I could opt out of it today at 36, I would in a heartbeat. I would probably give up everything I put in to be done with this garbage program. That's me. Now, if you're close to retirement, that should not be you. But I would give up the tens of thousands of dollars that I put into the program to be done with it and never have another penny taken out of my paycheck for Social Security if I could do it today. I'm telling you, if you actually go into your pay stub, and no one does it anymore, but look at your pay stub and look at how much is taken out for Social Security each and every paycheck. And you'll be like, wait, I could have that much more. And if I invest it myself, I would have 10x what Social Security is going to promise me, depending on how long I live anyway. I'll sign up for that, but neither here nor there. Mac Sloan goes on to write for the Star. Since 1935, the Social Security Administration has provided the American people financial protection for millions of citizens, created on the promise that the most vulnerable people in our society should be able to maintain a basic standard of living. However, with the re-election of Donald Trump and the move fast and break things approach that Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency have been taking to our services and staff, the stability of the program is in doubt. So notice how this article gets framed here in the Star. The article gets framed in as, without us, without the 57,000 workers at Social Security, you're screwed. See, that's why we should all want to be done with it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say this is the government providing a basic standard of living for all Americans as they get older, but then say, without the workers, without us, without the big bureaucracy, you're screwed. This is why I want to get rid of you clowns. This is why I want nothing to do with you. Because I do not want to sit here, and none of us should want to sit here and say, boy, I hope the government can figure it out so I can grow old and not have to be poor and not be out on the streets and have a roof over my head, because without the government, we just don't have a chance. This is the kind of narcissism that too many bureaucrats have. You need us. Meantime, they can't function without our money. They can't. It's just a fact. The government doesn't have any money. It operates off of our money. But then they want to act like you're lucky to have us. It's like, hold on here, chumps. No. You got a job because of us, okay? You got a job because of the private sector. Stop acting like you're doing me a favor here. As a technician with Social Security, writes Mac, I have seen firsthand the damage done to the agency. And so have many of my colleagues. Since DOGE, computer system issues have plagued us as our information technology budgets have been slashed. I will pump the brakes there as well. We have some of the smartest computer people on the planet involved with DOGE, starting with maybe the Einstein of our generation in Elon Musk. And now we've got the bureaucrats being like, our computers don't work. Help me with my computer. These guys like Elon Musk and these, in many cases, billionaires who have built incredible companies who are computer whizzes. They're the problem with your computer systems not functioning properly. Maybe because they're trying to make your computer systems operate in the 21st century, John.
You know how I know he's lying? He's saying he's got computer problems at the government that started with Doge. Liar.
That's right.
How dare you?
Understaffing across the board has led to case backlogs going back years with no end in sight. Beneficiaries are forced to wait for hours on hold or a callback for even basic services such as a bank or address update. And if they even have to manage to get one of the wonderful people who staff our teleservice centers, they may be forced to wait weeks or months to get an appointment to go into their local field office to prove their identity, even to make this one simple change. Our regional offices have been reduced in Kansas City, eliminating crucial support to our field offices and our beneficiaries. Okay. If you've experienced that, the phones are open at 913-408-7957. I'm all ears. I'd love to hear from you on that front. Something tells me that if that was happening, we would have heard about it before the Social Security worker writes about it to the Kansas City Star. But maybe that's me being naive.
Most of the callers will just tell you that's business as usual.
Well, yes, that's
right?
True as well. That's true as well. Whether it's the VA, Social Security, that's what we call dealing with the government. That's what we call that. So it's very obvious what's going on here. Now, that being said, there is an update here from Doge. Doge wants to eliminate about 7,000 jobs from the Social Security Administration. It's about 10, 11% of the workforce. Not a huge number. And I guarantee you that you could cut every government agency by give or take 10% and find efficiencies in every one of these bureaucracies. And if they could do it tomorrow, I would tell them to do it tomorrow. And I hope that they get there with Social Security. But you understand what's really going on here is bureaucrats trying to save bureaucrats. And that's, whatever. That's if you want your friend to still have a job, I get it. I would want my buddy to have a job too. But when you have a government and a country that's $36 trillion in debt, I'm sorry, you find efficiencies. That's what businesses do in the private sector. And the government has not been held accountable on that front for going on 35 years, at least, if not longer. So now you actually have people who want to go out there and try to fix it. And we get the sob story. And of course, the Star will publish that in a heartbeat because they largely agree with this assessment. But it's not something that I don't think most people are going to buy and most people are going to be super sympathetic on. Because you know and I know, if there were millions of Social Security recipients who are not getting their checks, whether it's in Kansas City or just around the country, that would be a headline story, right? That would be a story that all of media would be just beating to death ad nauseum. It's not happening. So instead, what you get is the Social Security worker who does the fear-mongering. Oh, this could be happening. This might be coming. Now, what is Doge actually doing? You might have missed this on Friday. The Trump administration asked the Supreme Court on Friday to clear the way for Doge to access Social Security systems. Of course, as they try to clean up the operation. So this comes after a judge in Maryland restricted Doge's access to Social Security under federal privacy laws. Now the administration is saying, they're going to the Supreme Court and saying, can Doge get this access to try to improve Social Security? Okay, I would give it to him in a heartbeat. That's me. But I also know this much. The people who are like, I would never give Elon and Doge all of my information, but will gladly put their Social Security number into their laptop for their sixth credit card that they're applying for. Come on. We willingly put our information onto our computers for the most nonsensical things, not having any idea who's able to access it. But now, we can't let this guy Elon have our Social Security numbers. Sorry, he's the richest man in the world. he's not interested in your grandma's $1,300 check.
I'm advocating here. I had a caller on their way to work at Social Security, had noted that it's her second career, used to work in private sector, and immediately noticed the ridiculous inefficiencies. Using an antiquated system, like the Doogie Howser thing, when you start typing and the letters just appear, whatever that's called. She's like, we're on an old system. I have to use my iPhone to calculate for people. She's using her phone.
Wow.
These programs are so outdated. So
yeah, we wouldn't want the guy who founded Tesla. We wouldn't want the guy who, is one of the great entrepreneurs of our generation potentially helping the Social Security Department fix a system like that. Come on.
An employee with private experience moving over to the government immediately sees these things.
Yeah. And I guarantee you that there's a lot of folks like her out there. So I know she probably didn't want to go on the air to protect her identity, which I appreciate, but I'm glad she shared it with you, John. Give these Doge guys what they need to help clean up the government inefficiencies, because we've got potentially just one shot at this. And the momentum is there, and it's got to happen now. Let's get to the good, the bad, and the ugly from the weekend. Then we've got Scott Faughn of the Missouri Times. Get you the latest on what he's hearing about the Chiefs and the Royals down in Jeff City. That'll be a good conversation just after 8 o'clock on a Monday morning on 95.7 FM KCMO, and streaming as always on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Stream Mundo in the morning on the KCMO Talk Radio app.
Oh, this is too much. Just real quick on Social Security. On the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, I asked my neighbor up the street why he doesn't retire. His response was, quote, I work at home for Social Security. I'm already retired. That's well done. Very nice job. I love that.
Show some RESPICT.
At least the guy's honest, right? Let's do it on a Monday morning.
It's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly on KCMO Talk Radio. Now on 95.7 FM.
All right, let's get to the good from the weekend. I never thought I'd say this, but how about Boston fans? Yeah, I was in Boston for not even 48 hours, visited my brother up there, and we went to a Red Sox game on Saturday. They were playing the Twins. And I wore a Harrison Butker jersey, figuring I'd get some jeers and some boos and some heckling. I didn't get anything. I mean, these fans, they've lost their mojo. The Patriots must stink so bad that they don't even care about the Chiefs and how good the Chiefs are right now. They can't get out of their own division. I guess they got to deal with the Bills and the Dolphins and, to a lesser extent, the Jets. So they don't even care about the Chiefs. I walked through Fenway Park where, you got 35,000 people. No one said a word to me until one guy behind me in line getting a beer was actually from Poplar Bluff, Missouri, and was like, nice jersey, man. And he was there visiting for a game as well. He was on a work trip. And then I had one guy in the entire stadium boo me. One guy. Out of the thousands of people that walked by that saw Chiefs jersey. So I don't know what's gotten into these Boston fans, but they are getting soft, and I guess I'll make them the good because I was hoping to come back with some heckling stories and maybe a beer dumped on my head or something that was going to be good, but I got nothing. So good on you, Boston fans. You're nicer than you get credit for. The bad from the weekend is parts of this interview that Kristen Walker did on Meet the Press with the president yesterday. It was just so absurd, including the question as to whether or not he is going to declare war on Canada and try to take – this was a serious question in an interview with Donald Trump, whether or not he's going to try to take over Canada. Even Trump just chuckled at the bizarreness of this at the end of the question.
They need us. We don't need them.
You and I talked, and I asked you if you would rule out military force to take Greenland, and you said no, you don't rule out anything. Would you rule out military force to take Canada?
Well,
yep, that's where we're going next. And listen to you can hear the urgency in Kristen Walker's voice. That's where I give Trump credit. I don't know how he does this stuff with a straight face sometimes. I really don't. Now, the reason Trump is one of these guys who says, I won't say no to anything, that's the business side of him, right? If you signal what you will do or not do, you don't have a lot of leverage. That's negotiating 101. So that's why Trump does this whole thing of like, no, I'm not going to signal either way what I'm going to do because then my opponents get an advantage on me if I say what my limits or my line is. And we all know this. Going back to Trump 1.0, I mean, there were times when you're like rolling your eyes, knowing full well this is just how Trump does his business. And you've got NBC asking Trump in an interview where they have a finite amount of time whether or not he's going to go to war with Canada. I mean, what are we doing here?
I think we're not going to ever get to that point. It could happen. Something could happen with Greenland. I'll be honest. We need that for national and international security.
But not with
I think
Canada?
It's highly unlikely. I don't see it with Canada. I just don't see it. I have to be honest with you.
Okay.
He wants to actually hedge himself and not take anything off the table because that's always how he talks and does things. But even at the end there, he's like laughing. I got to be honest with you. No, we're not. We're not going to war with Canada. We're not taking them over and making them the 51st state here, okay? It's not going to happen. Sorry, Kristen, not going to give you that headline. Although I'm sure there were some headlines somewhere. I didn't see them, but they read, Trump doesn't rule out war with Canada. It's like, man, you people just can't help yourself. You really can't. That was the bad from the weekend. The ugly. Because I was traveling and ended up with a 4-hour layover in St. Louis, which what a dump of an airport. I could make that the ugly, but I won't. I listened to the interviews of the city manager finalists in Kansas City, Missouri. It's a big job, right? You got 3 finalists, all internal candidates. You got the interim manager right now, Kimiko Gilmore. You have Mario Vasquez, who I keep wanting to call Mario Lopez. And then you have Pat Klein. Kimiko's the front runner. She's the interim city manager right now. But I watched her interview on YouTube from late last week, and I mean, it was the Kamala Harris of city manager interviews, where it was just word salad after word salad. Here she was on economic development.
But I think my general question is, what will your approach to economic development be?
So I wanted to let everyone know out there that Kansas City is open for business. We have over $2 billion of economic development of building going on right now. I want to make sure that the EDC has the agency that they need to make those deals and help us with that. You know, in PIEA, with the TIF Commission, all of those things. I want to make sure that they have the agency so they can get things done for us. You know, I believe that as long as we continue, you have to show up. And I believe as long as you show up, and then I can make those recommendations, your priorities, I can make those clear to the EDC, to Port KC. I can also look within within Kansas City. Is that
all right? Yeah. What's your economic development strategy? Buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. Nonsensical sentence, rambling. Is that my time? Goodness gracious. Thank you very much. That was not good. And the entire interview was like that. It was cringe of all cringe. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Scott Faughn of the Missouri Times, the Chiefs and Royals latest, and more with him next. Man, there is no shortage of news happening out of Jeff City. Of course, they're heading down the home stretch for the Missouri legislative session, and no one knows the inner workings of that town than our next guest. Scott Faughn of Missouri Times is here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Scott, let's start off with tax cuts. I want to get the Chiefs, Royals, drama, some other things, but I keep hearing that tax cuts might happen. Now they might not happen. Are tax cuts happening in Jeff City this session?
Well, they have triggers set up, so tax cuts are going to happen whether or not a bill's passed or not. Previous legislation is set in course of things. When revenue goes up, they lower the income tax a little bit. So that's going to happen. As far as the income tax, another income tax cut to trigger more, I don't know this year. I think what's likely to happen if you see a tax cut is a capital gains tax cut. And I'll tell you why. I mean, we went from 6%, we're on the road to 4%, and let's be honest, nothing in Missouri has gotten better. There is nothing in this state government producing above the national average, not population, not GDP. The only thing, honestly, is the University of Missouri system. That is producing well and above the national average in most things. But I think there's some folks that are starting to ask the question, we went from 6 to 4, what good has happened? Now, what plan do you have to implement all the way 100% before you see any results? So there's some folks question that, but there's a capital gains tax cut to where right now a lot of folks would see it on real estate. Like if you buy a house, you have to keep it for 2 years, or you pay capital gains. They want to cut the state capital gains part of that. It's an interesting way to directly spur economic growth. That maybe that's a way you start to see how you make this state grow again. Because I do think, Mike Keogh is going to take this state to zero income tax, I think, at some point in the next 7 years. I just think that at some point you have to ask, okay, when do we see benefit and what does that look like? And again, go back to when is the first sign of benefit from that? Because I'm a tax cut guy, I always have been. But I do think it's also, I'm a practical guy. I mean, where are the benefits? And when if they're not here now, when do we see them?
Yeah, and they have been, you're right. There are triggers in place to cut income taxes incrementally when they hit X amount of revenue, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Now, I want to ask you, too, there was some drama late last week. The lieutenant governor of Missouri, his name is David Wassinger, and the reality is most people around the state of Missouri could not pick the lieutenant governor out of a lineup, but he made some noise last week when he sparked a bit of a fight with Senate leadership, basically calling for rules changes, wanting to play a bigger role in how the Missouri Senate operates. It's never been clear to me what exactly the lieutenant governor does. So what's the goal here from Wassinger, and is there anything there?
Well, the goal of every lieutenant governor is to wake up in the morning, call over the mansion, and ask Sherry Childs if the governor's alive today. And if he is, their schedule's pretty free and opened up, right? Similar to a vice president. I mean, there's really nothing the vice president does except make sure the president's alive. If the president's alive that day, well, I mean, he can pretty much what he wants. David Wassinger has one constitutionally mandated job to preside over the Missouri State Senate. His office, what started this was his office got a budget cut. They cut an FTE and they cut $80,000 out of his budget. It's the smallest statewide office budget because they don't do a lot, frankly.
Now, wait, is that a Republican being hypocritical, saying we need to spend less, and then when their office gets cut, they're like, whoa, not my office?
I think that's exactly what's happening here. And he may have a very logical reason to say why he needs that extra employee and what they do. I have no idea. But this, in all honesty, started when the Senate, the House kept his budget the same. The Senate cut his budget. And he's not happy about it. And so then they also cut Denny Hoskins' budget a great deal. And so one of the
he's the Secretary of
State.
State.
Are wanting to add this. Yes, a group of senators was wanting to add money back to his budget. And so anyhow, Joe Nicola from your neck of the woods out in the Independence area, he spoke up and was critical of the process and he wanted to have more floor debate. Well, the thing is, there was floor debate, and you could make amendments to the budget. You just had to get 18 votes to pass them, like anything else. The amendments that Joe, I think some of his allies had, They just didn't have the votes. A couple of them, they tried to lower the Supreme Court salary to that of a state rep. A couple things like that, and they got voted down. Whether they were good ideas or bad ideas, you have to have 18 votes in the state Senate to enact any of them, right? Good or bad. So there was some pain and consternation along with some of those things. None of it really that big a deal, but I think David Wassinger appreciated Joe Nicola saying he didn't like the process. He wants a bigger role in the process. And so Wassinger kind of unleashed a 5-minute speech, part of it thanking the staff. And I mean, can you imagine being those staffers that got thanked by the time he was done? Didn't do them any favors. But he basically didn't like the process, and he's going to do rule changes. Well, the problem with that is the lieutenant has just as much ability to propose rule changes in the Missouri State Senate as Scott Faughn or Pete Mundo, which is to say none. And so part of it's just, and I'll tell you this, it came down to, I think Wassinger, what he really wanted was to be mentioned on the Pete Mundo show, which he is getting. But I think at the end of the day, the senators have two basic beefs. One, it is a bit of a struggle for David Wassinger to preside over the Senate. He has not mastered the rules yet. And to have a statewide job that has really only one responsibility, I think he is a very smart guy. I think folks would have appreciated before you start criticizing to actually learn the rules, and then he doesn't stay there very long. I mean, the senators are accustomed to Mike Kehoe and Mike Parson sitting in that dais and presiding over the Senate late into the night. David Wassinger stays there. Now, Thursday he stayed the whole time, but for the most part, he's only there for about an hour. It's like, I bet you there's some guys on the job site listening to Mundo in the morning right now. If you had a guy that popped in for an hour every other day or so throughout the week and popped back out, and then on Friday he had thoughts about how you could do your job better, I mean, that dude's getting locked in the porta potty, right? And I don't here.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. That makes sense to me. Scott Faughn of the Missouri Times on KCMO. Now, we got to get into what is going on, if anything. We haven't spoken in a few weeks with you. Chiefs, Royals, legislative sessions wrapping up. What is new on either of these two teams and their future in the state of Missouri?
I have been saying for 3 years now, maybe longer, that I think the Royals are on a slow, tortured, painful walk to the Northland. I think they have decided to make this as awful on everybody as possible. I think they're constantly looking for a better deal around the corner. But I've never seen how it doesn't make the most financial sense for the Kansas City Royals to play their games in the Northland. With that huge area they have for development and development around the stadium, I don't know how you don't get around that. There's a sports commission getting established for Clay County. Jerry Nolte was walking the halls of the Capitol last week, and man, that Jerry Nolte is just a one-man wrecking crew. If you see Jerry, bet on Jerry to succeed at whatever he's doing. I think that's where that's heading. The Chiefs, I think their problem is no longer the state. I think the state has made it clear what they're willing to do and how they would go about doing that. But the local folks have to get on board. And there's, dysfunction in government matters. Dysfunction in local government matters more. And that county government is having a very hard time doing simple things. And if you can't do simple things, getting a tax on the ballot for the sports authority here in Kansas City to keep the Chiefs and renovate Arrowhead, they're going to have to get their act together is the next part of this.
Yeah, that is the next part of it. Is there any indication that the state is willing to step in and basically deal directly with the Chiefs and Jackson County be damned? Or Jackson County really has to basically hold up its end of the bargain and be a functioning county government to make any of this move forward?
100%. I think the state has made it clear what they're willing to do. I think they would have, look, the best scenario for this was to get the biggest Chiefs fan in the world, Mike Parson, on his way out of office to put together a package of development bonds and things. But frankly, the Chiefs are ready. The state has been ready, but you have to have that county sales tax in place. And right now, getting anything in place in Jackson County, it's a challenge. Now, I'll leave it up to folks that cover it every day to tell you whose fault it is or whatever. I just don't know. But I'll tell you this. It's not really the state that everybody's waiting on. And it's not really the Chiefs. On the Royals side, yes, I think you can point to where the Royals have been very indecisive and very challenging to deal with. In this situation, that's not what you can say fairly about the Chiefs. I think the state is prepared to step in for the Chiefs. I just think that, you're going to have Jackson County produce, or I don't know I don't think there's a next step forward until Jackson County can decide what it's willing to do and actually get it done.
Last thing in 30 seconds, is there a sense that, do you know if the Chiefs are kind of fed up with everything on the Missouri side, or are they willing to kind of make this thing work?
I think they're fed up with the Royals and trying to do something alongside them. I think there was a lot of indecisiveness. I don't think they'd ever say this, but until the deal is totally broken, but I think they're getting a little frustrated dealing with Jackson County.
Yeah. Oh, that's understandable. Scott,
as any rational person would be.
I mean, seriously, as anybody with 2 ears, 2 eyes, and, functioning senses would as well. You're right. Hey, man, I appreciate you, Scott. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Talk to you later, bud.
See ya. Scott Faughn, Missouri Times on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. Coming up, you might have heard this from the president. How many dolls are too many dolls for your kids? I struggle with this one. I'll explain it next. KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM.
Call Mundo 913-408-7957. Now on 95.7 FM.
This dog ain't going to hunt, man. I wouldn't go down this road. There are great ways to frame the goals of the administration on the issue of tariffs and trade. But telling people how many toys to buy their children is not the thing that's going to work. It's not. And I say this as somebody who is down with the policies of the administration and what they are attempting to do. And I'm hoping like heck they have great success because the country is going to be better off for it and the rest of the world is going to be better off for it, especially as it relates to China. So President Trump sits down yesterday with Kristen Welker, Meet the Press, and she asked him about this kind of offhanded comment he made, a week to 10 days ago when he was asked about, the price of toys in particular going up because 4 out of 5 toys that we buy here in the United States made in China. I hate that. Trust me. I mean, I've got 3 little kids, 6 and under. I see it all. And we're not like, listen, they have toys. Don't get me wrong. But we are not inundated with toys, floor to ceiling, wall to wall. That's just not how our house looks. But a lot of the crap's made in China. There's no way around it. So Trump gets asked about this yesterday by Kristen Welker and says this.
Said this week, got a lot of attention. You were at your cabinet meeting. You said, quote, I'm going to quote what you said, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30.
Yeah.
And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. Are you saying that your tariffs will cause some prices to go up?
No, I think the tariffs are going to be great for us because it's going to make us rich.
But you said some dolls are going to cost more. Isn't that an acknowledgement that some prices will go up?
I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have 3 dolls or 4 dolls because what we were doing with China was just unbelievable. We had a trade deficit of hundreds of billions of dollars with China.
When you say they could have $3 instead of $30, are you saying Americans could see empty store shelves?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they don't need to have $30. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5.
I've seen a lot of pencils in my day. I've never seen 250. But listen, 2 things are true at once here. Kristen Welker's being wildly disingenuous. Are you saying empty shelves? No, I'm not saying that, Kristen. Come on. But at the same time, that little snippet of Trump saying, I don't think an 11-year-old needs X amount of dolls. I mean, that's a campaign ad for 26, right? I can see that commercial being sprayed all over the television screens in a year and a half of Trump basically saying, I don't think a 11-year-old girl should have $30. I think she should have $3. You know that they can use that in a commercial, and they probably will use that in a commercial.
Trump hates 11-year-old girls.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to turn
Yeah,
into.
and suddenly the people that couldn't define gender 5 minutes ago can now define an 11-year-old girl. So that will be awfully rich as well. If that brings them back to a world of, boys and girls, men and women in 2 genders, I actually might take it. But either way, that's kind of a sideshow and sidebar to the whole thing that we're talking about here, which is the fact that if Joe Biden, now I do think there's a nuanced difference here, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. But you know and I know that if during peak inflation, Joe Biden had said, you don't really need all that stuff anyway, right? Yeah, I know stuff's up 20%, but you don't really need it. You're like, whoa. Come on, chump. Come on, Pops. I mean, come on, man. You're not going to tell me what I need and don't need. This is America, man. You're going to ration goods on me here. That would be a segment on the show, and I could do an hour worth of calls on that in a heartbeat. I mean, we could flood the phones, 5, 6 deep for an hour, and we could do we could do a whole show on it. Forget an hour. We could do a whole show on that. So that's where I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, framing what the administration is doing is not about limiting dolls for kids. Okay, that's not the goal here. It's not the point of any of this. The point is to say we've got bad actors in China, and we need to reset the global trade relationship that will be better for the American citizens in the short term and the long term, and here's why. But nobody wants to hear their government or their politicians talk about who should have how much of what. That's not something that I don't think any of us want to frankly hear.
Didn't we have Biden tell us how many hot dogs we could eat?
Yeah.
Summers ago?
Yeah, when inflation was going up. You're right. There was something like that.
Yeah,
Hey, stick to one hot dog.
You don't need a 64-ounce pop. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Biden said that. I'm saying it just fits in this category where we don't need Bloomberg telling us how much pop we can drink.
Yes, and we didn't need Biden saying, hey, just have one hot
One
dog.
hot dog.
Yeah,
You
just one hot dog.
get all the roach droppings you need in one serving. So
yeah, we didn't need any of that. You got Rex Archer telling you how much cranberry sauce you can have at Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Boy, I love
Thanksgiving. Not too many guests, not too much corn casserole there. Like, we don't want that. So this is, and we talked to Bill O'Reilly about this last week. The framing of this issue is so important. I agree with the goal of the administration on trade. They have the cojones to do something that nobody else has had the cojones to do because all they've cared about is getting reelected. Trump's got a 100-year vision, not a one-year vision on this stuff, and it's admirable. Whether it works or not remains to be seen, but I got his back 110% on it. That being said, explaining it and framing it in the right way is going to be critically important in a way that, first off, sounds palatable to the American people, and part two, doesn't give your political opponents basically a 30-second commercial of the president saying, how many dolls do you really need? I agree that we should get back to a world where kids are being kids and not inundated with crap from China. And we're all guilty of that to some degree, myself included. But is that the message that people want from their politicians when they spend 5 years feeling like their dollar's not going as far? I don't think it hits. 913-408-7957. News and you next on KCMO.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Not only are the dolls under attack, protein's under attack too. Yeah, I'll tell you about that coming up. 8:35. Good morning. Happy Monday. Beautiful start to the week across Kansas City. Glad you're here on 95.7 FM KCMO. So the doll thing for Trump is not a winner. It's not going to work. Just avoid telling people how many dolls they should buy their kids and explain, as Bill O'Reilly succinctly put last week here on KCMO, explain this tariff process, the why, the benefits, and how it's a win for the American people. And yes, there might be some turbulent times ahead, but there's a strategy. See, here's the difference. When you were looking back to 2022, when inflation was rampant at 40-year highs, there was no strategy from that administration. It was just like, well, we're going to keep spending money and basically trying to buy votes. And suddenly people were like, wait, hold on. When you spend money, it devalues the dollar. Therefore, the dollars that we make don't go as far. I don't like this all that much. Like, we tried more or less a form of universal basic income during COVID, and it totally backfired after the sugar rush of 2021, where everyone was like, the economy's great, and then it came crashing to a halt because the sugar rush of government spending eventually was going to have a negative impact on the economy. What Trump's got to do right now is explain why he's doing this and how this can benefit the country, and not say to people, hey, instead of buying $30, buy 2, buy 3. Like, that is a commercial that is made for Democrats in the midterms. Go ahead, Steve in Kansas City. What's up, big dog?
Oh, Pete, I'm going to go all John with my references. Hello, Dallas. Well, to quote the Ethel Merman Louis Armstrong film, it's so nice to have this lead on ourselves. I was.
You better stop singing, or I'm dumping your butt. Go ahead.
I was kind of with you here. I was kind of queasy about this, but I'll sort of explain it like, you know, we're going to own the news cycle, you know, just like this and the Alcatraz stuff for a couple of days. When he says this stuff, people like it because you're giving it to you straight. You know, he's not trying to sugarcoat it. You know, people respect that. That's authentic. That people like him and love him for that. You know, I can accept less toys on the shelves. That's not necessarily a bad thing if they're safer and you pay another couple bucks for some trash that you don't have to buy some trash made out of China. I agree. It's not great look, but I don't think he really cares about the midterms. I mean, he's going to.
Well, you know what? If he doesn't care about you know what happens day one if he doesn't care about the midterms and the Democrats win the House, right? You know what happens? They impeach him. And I know that doesn't matter, but you know that's what happens on day one. They impeach him.
I respect the guy. I mean, for 30 or 40 years.
I do too, Steve. Steve, I do too. I voted for the guy 3 times. I love him. I'm just saying you can't give the Democrats a win like this by telling people how many toys they should buy for their kids. It doesn't work.
This will all be forgotten by February. Hopefully, this will all be forgotten by February. I respect the hell. We've been waiting 30 or 40 years. Every day is like Steve, Christmas, like Christmas Eve.
Now you're saying things that most people aren't going to refute. I mean, now you're just now you're having a totally different conversation, which is fine. You've totally deflected. That's totally fine. I get it.
I'm just saying that this is all temporary. He's been saying all along, this is all temporary hurt for a long, like you said it yourself, Pete.
Yeah.
100-year gain.
Yeah.
We're not talking about 3 years in the midterms. We're talking about Republicans being elected for the next 50 or 60 years.
Yeah.
Like the Democrats used to have the House. I think that should be the long-term plan. Don't worry about temporary concerns.
Well, then
honestly.
I agree. Then say that. Steve. Don't tell people how many dolls to buy. It's really, you're literally making the case for me. Thank you. I appreciate you, buddy. Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Here.
Thank you for making my case.
It came to full circle, and I'm like, okay, do you hear yourself, Steve?
I'm literally
nailed it.
I'm drawing a circle on my notepad here, and he just came around, and there he is. The circle is complete. Woo! There you go, big fella. Well done. Nice job. Excellent work. That's all I'm saying here, man. All right. In Vanity Fair, I know many of you missed this over the weekend, but I was traveling to and from Boston, went to visit my brother, spent 4 hours in that dump of a St. Louis airport yesterday, and I had a lot of time to read a lot of things I might not normally read. Vanity Fair ran a headline piece. Why are Americans so obsessed with protein? Blame MAGA. Your protein obsession is secretly a MAGA obsession. That's right. Yep. So I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. I promise I won't do that. I'm not going to try to get a bunch of people to tune out right now. But the article read, from the Liver King to the podcast bros to RFK Jr.'s MAHA, Make America Healthy Again constituents, America's infatuation with protein has reached a fever pitch, and it's undeniably gendered. Well, first off, that's not true. Kate follows a lot of, obviously, women on her social media. And there is a huge, there's actually a movement, and she was telling me about this, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. There's a movement for women to actually take low levels, very low levels of testosterone to help with their muscles, along with high protein intake. That's a movement. It's not driven by Trump or MAHA. I mean, listen, Trump looks good, but Trump's not exactly pumping iron 4 or 5 days a week here, okay? It's not happening. Now, on the other side, yes, you have men who are into working out and testosterone, and RFK Jr. and his MAHA movement's a part of that. But to somehow suggest people getting healthy and acknowledging the crap that they've been eating for too long is somehow political and highly gendered in nature, not only is it disingenuous, it's a lie, but it's this weird obsession with making everything political, like this nonsense from Vanity Fair.
Over something you just realized is happening, right? Yeah. There are these people that come up with crap and, hey, do you know that? Yeah, since 1960. Dude, I mean, Charles Atlas kicking sand on the beach in the comic book ads. People were trying to buff up since back in the 40s.
They're very...
Jack LaLanne show.
They're very upset. Here's what I think this comes down to. They're very upset that there is an awakening to the amount of garbage that we have been putting into our bodies. Mm-hmm. And because they have to oppose everything that Trump does because of the derangement, they can't acknowledge like RFK's MAHA movement is actually a very healthy one and one that's apolitical and one that we should all get behind. But they can't help themselves.
Is there too much protein in your meat? Details at 10.
They'll miss it. They would rather a world where you don't exercise, like during COVID. You don't exercise, gyms aren't open, you eat a bunch of processed crap, you wear your mask, and then you go ahead and you pop some pills from Big Pharma to feel better about yourself. And as a result, then you become a lemming who is just reliant on the government for all of your wants and needs. And you're basically just a zombie, reliant on the government, on big government, and Big Pharma. That's their ideal world. If people are out there kicking butt, working out, realizing they've been eating crap for far too long, the big food industry has screwed them left and right. Big Pharma's been, they've done some good things, obviously. There's no doubt about it. I won't deny the technological advancements that pharmaceuticals have brought to this country and brought to the world. But there has definitely been way too much lobbying on behalf of these companies. You have had a medical industry that has been way too reliant on overprescribing people. All that is absolutely true. And people are waking up to that. They're waking up to the sham. And they're acknowledging, there's, don't get me wrong, a lot of technological good here. But you know what? If I get myself in great shape, if I try to focus every day on eating a little better and getting in better shape and being in better health, a lot of problems can be solved. Get some sunlight as well, a little vitamin D, and you can be a pretty unstoppable force. They don't like that. Because guess what? Those people are less likely to be good liberals. And that's what chews at them the worst here. And that's what Vanity Fair is most bothered by. I mean, let's be honest. As the parties have continued to shift and change, look at the rallies down on State Line Road at the Tesla dealership. Okay? It's not exactly a who's who of People magazine cover models here.
Well, Large Marge with her lunch lady haircut could tip over about 20 of those boys wearing backpacks down there, too. So you like the senior division in some of these crowds.
She's a real beauty.
No doubt about it. Jeez. Oh, my.
Did I paint an accurate picture there?
Yeah.
For you? Okay.
Yeah, we all know Large Marge. You're right there.
Lunch lady haircut.
I mean, that's what you got. Okay. So yes, if caring about your protein intake, if wanting to eat healthier, if wanting to exercise, if wanting to be your own person, if not wanting to be beholden to Big Pharma makes you diehard MAGA, then you know what? It's time for me to lean in a little more. I guess that's the only conclusion I can come to. 913-408-7957. KCMO Talk Radio. Pete, sadly, I'm enjoying your show on the KCMO Talk Radio app from the St. Louis airport this morning. I feel for you. I do. I spent 4 hours there yesterday. My message to the major airlines, take your connecting flights out of St. Louis and bring them to Kansas City because that place is a dump. An absolute dump. Yeah, I was there on Friday for 2 hours and then again yesterday for 4 hours. Going to and from a quick trip to Boston. That place is horrible. Absolutely horrible. Now, speaking of tariffs, did you know that they are, say it with me there, Mark, you know the R word. John's on the phone, so he can't. Tariffs are racist. We'll tell you why next. All right, meantime, let me tell you what's going on with my friends over at Centric. If you are dragging your feet on figuring out how to make sure that artificial intelligence is a bigger part of your business, go to centric.com/AI. That's CENTRIQ.com/AI. You might have missed it back in March. We told you about a free event they were doing. They were inviting small and medium businesses in Kansas City to their State Line Road headquarters to just do an introductory tutorial of how AI can help you. Well, they're still offering that up. They just want to meet you. All right. There's no upfront cost. There's no downside to taking a meeting with Centric and just acknowledging that your competitors are using AI. So you can either fall behind or you can play a little catch up. And you can know that Centric, who's been helping, of course, the workforce here in Kansas City for the better part of 20 years and training the technology workforce for 20 years in Kansas City, is the best place to start. They're Kansas Cityans and they're helping small businesses every day get ahead with artificial intelligence, which can work alongside your business to make you more efficient. Go to centric.com/AI. That's CENTRIQ.com/AI.
It's Mundo in the Morning. Now on FM at 95.7. Set a preset on your radio. KCMO Talk Radio.
Did you see the latest attack by the Kansas City Star at the men and women of the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department? They really can't help themselves. These losers are just something else. And I want to say something else, but I don't want Mark to hit the dump button at 8:52 on a Monday, so I will just use the word losers. So, of course, we've all been mourning the loss of Kansas City firefighter and paramedic Graham Hoffman. He was laid to rest on Friday. So, and this came after, of course, there was a woman on the highway, 152 highway, 2 weekends ago. A call comes in that she's basically wandering the road. Police show up. Then the paramedics show up because she's got, a cut on her hand. And the woman ends up killing Graham Hoffman as he is working as a paramedic with this woman who also had been, of course, arrested a week prior. Don't forget, she was arrested a week prior and was let out on what appears to be a fairly low bond. Now, that's been debated back and forth. We'll save that for another time. But you have a family that obviously lost a 29-year-old, and it's an absolute tragedy. So the Kansas City Star figures, well, there's got to be a way we can blame the cops for this, right? Editorial over the weekend, yesterday morning, KC police knew ambulance stabbing suspect was dangerous. Could she have been stopped? They go on the note here. While it's almost a given that we immediately want to assign blame, in this case, everyone must exert patience or exercise patience as city officials sort out what, if anything, went wrong. The public-facing approach must continue. City officials must analyze the factors that led to Hoffman's death with a fine-tooth comb and present those findings to the public in a timely manner. So as they say, hey, we got to exercise caution here. Let's also figure out a way to blame the cops, writes the Kansas City Star. They go on the note here, after the officer noticed a laceration in Basel, the woman's hand, he summoned an ambulance. Court records indicate. Later, the officer offered to take Basel home, but she declined. She then voluntarily agreed to be taken to the hospital by Graham Hoffman and his partner. The officer followed in the police vehicle. Basel and Hoffman were alone in the patient area of the ambulance when she stabbed him, according to court records. In documents we read, there's no indication the officer involved searched or performed a pat-down on Basel to see if she was armed with a weapon. She was not a criminal suspect, Kansas City police have said, so there was no reason to assume the worst. But she was considered dangerous by the police because she bit the arm of an off-duty Platte City officer in the Northland back on April 23rd. What the officer knew about this important information is a question police have yet to answer. Officials did tell us the department is reviewing the incident to determine if anything needs to be addressed. Okay, so right there, the Kansas City Star admits that really they don't know anything. The Kansas City Star notes that in documents, there's no indication the officer searched or performed a pat-down. Well, the woman was not under arrest. She was not a criminal suspect. So here's how this would have worked, all right? You know and I know. She's not under arrest. The police didn't have any authority to search her. And I guarantee you, had they searched this woman, you and I know what the Kansas City Star would have done. Kansas City police racially profile black woman, and they search an uncharged black woman, and nothing comes of it, but we got lawsuits on our hands. We got the Kansas City Star coming after the Kansas City police. Just be straight. You and I both know that that's exactly how this would have gone down. If nothing comes out of this story, but they're, patting this woman down or they're searching her when she's not under arrest, they would have played the race card. They would have said, this is the Kansas City cops being incompetent. This is them being racist. This is exactly what they would have done. Exactly what they would have done. So shame on them, but it's par for the course. Now, speaking of racism, did you know that tariffs are racist as well? Yes, let's roll this clip, ABC in Chicago, from over the
Some
weekend.
economists say tariffs will have a particularly negative impact on Black households and small businesses in communities of color.
I think the risk is real.
But do not fear. That's the message from Pastor Raymond Thomas, co-founder and dean at the Joseph School of Business. While teaching practical business solutions in a faith-based environment, the Christian Business School has created its own partner network by trying to help insulate small businesses in Black and brown neighborhoods from the tariff shock and economic uncertainty.
Because of our international presence, right, we now have opportunity to create platforms like we have what we call a global partner network, again, where we can develop relationships, again, in Nigeria, in Tanzania, in South Africa, where we can begin to look at other channels for supply and for distribution.
So why would tariffs impact a small business owned by a Black person more than a small business owned by a white person or an Asian person? I am so confused as to how any of this actually works, because every business is different. Every business operates differently, obviously uses different goods and services and parts and things like that may have some tariff impact, some may not. It does not make any sense. And if you actually want to have the conversation on who gets impacted the most by political decisions, well, how about the fact that inflation, which impacts everybody, is far more likely to have an impact on those at the lower end of the socioeconomic ladder, which are more likely to be people of color. But something tells me that was not a package that they probably reported on over the last 4 years. But I might be wrong on that. I might be wrong. Coming up next on KCMO, two of the most important people that could have one of the most important jobs in Kansas City. I want to compare them side by side right after the news. Well, Mayor Lucas is trying to drum up some enthusiasm for this, but I promise you it's not going to work. That's why we've got the highlights or the lowlights for you here on KCMO. 9 o'clock hour, Keatsman's 1 hour away. So Quentin Lucas 1 hour ago put this up on X. Quote, we want to make sure you know what we're doing at the city. So we held our recent city manager interviews in a public hearing and streamed live on Fountain City TV. You can catch all the recorded interviews at full length on YouTube. Enjoy, he says. Very Trump-esque. The one word, enjoy, exclamation point. This tweet from the mayor got 1 retweet and 5 likes. No one watched it. No one will watch it. And I just happened to watch some of these over the weekend as I was traveling and spent 4 hours, and that's 4 hours too many, in the St. Louis airport yesterday. So I'm listening to these YouTube interviews that were done late last week, and the mayor mentioned this on his Thursday show or his Thursday appearance here on KCMO, that these interviews with these 3 finalists for the next city manager would be happening. And no one watches this stuff. I mean, it's like watching paint dry. But I figured, hey, I got some time to kill here. As a duty to KCMO listeners, I'll take a listen and see what I find. And they were all pretty bad in different ways. You have these 3 finalists who are all internal candidates. You've got Kimiko Gilmore, who is right now the interim city manager to replace Brian Platt. You have Mario Vasquez and then Patrick Klein. They all work for or have worked for the city of Kansas City, Missouri. And they're all the finalists to replace Brian Platt. And this is a big job in Kansas City. Like it's a huge job. You got the World Cup coming next year. This is a job that matters. This is the person that's in charge of, making sure your trash is picked up on time, your snow's removed, potholes are filled, street lights, all these different things. It's not sexy if it's done well, but it's an important job. Economic development, getting things done downtown and elsewhere around Kansas City. It's a big job, and it matters a lot for the success of this town. And I heard some of these answers over the last 24 hours, and it was just really bad. Really bad. There was one moment in particular where both of the front runners, and right now, from what I'm hearing, Kimiko Gilmore is the front runner, and Mario Vasquez is in second place. Patrick Klein is just kind of there, but it's really down to Gilmore and Vasquez. You have, from what I understand, and this is just my reporting, many on city council, the black city council members who want Gilmore to be the manager. She is a black female. But a lot of people are coming around on this Vasquez guy. Now, obviously, race should not play a role in any of this. But remember, there are emails from 5 years ago when Brian Platt got the job as city manager. He's a white male. And there's an email that I've seen on record from Melissa Robinson on the city council saying that she was very upset that the city of Kansas City, Missouri hired or did not hire a black female as city manager. That was 4.5 years ago now. So that is still lingering in the background of all this. I don't much care who gets the job. I don't care what their skin color is. I want the person to be competent. I want her to be the best person for the job. And I'm telling you, based on some of what I heard in these interviews, I am very underwhelmed. Here was Kimiko Gilmore yesterday, or last week, I should say. I listened yesterday, being asked about transparency within the Kansas City, Missouri government. This is a very easy question. Let's see how she answered it.
Reform that department. Sure. Well, the first thing that you have to do is go in and do a deep dive into the structure and the organization. I would sit down with each person, leadership first, and then also all of the members of that division, and to find out exactly how they're feeling, what they've seen, and how and their ideas about how to go forward. After that, like I said, and I'll just say in the communications division, we are going to, you all have asked for a audit of that division. I will take those recommendations. I will take what I heard from those folks that are in communications and review all of that to find the best possible way forward. What I would like to do is to bring in someone, a consultant that is versed in local government public information.
Oh my gosh. That's
I'm
where
gonna
you
spend some money.
Yeah, we're going to hire someone else. We're going to hire a consultant on communications. I give you 4 hours of free communication consulting every day here on KCMO. Doesn't cost you a dime, as Dave Ramsey says. The advice is worth what you pay for it, which is nothing. Just support our advertisers here on KCMO. Yeah, if you are a city manager and you've got to be like, yes, I'm going to talk to everybody, and then we're going to figure out what went wrong in the communications department, and then I'm going to hire a communications consultant expert from the outside who's going to advise us on how to communicate. If you don't know how to do that basic part of the job, you cannot be the city manager. This is government gobbledygook that's being spewed there by Kimiko Gilmore. And to me, it's entirely disqualifying.
Well, those action words, I mean, I'm not interested in an interim person who has to do a deep dive. Aren't you familiar as the interim?
Yeah, well, that's a great point as well.
Typically, as the interim, you've come from within.
Yeah, you should have a leg up and say, hey, we've got problems A, B, and C. We're going full-blown transparency.
Specifics, yeah.
I will do interviews with media around Kansas City. I will make sure that I'm the point person. Stop with the whole, we're going to do an investigation of the investigation, and then we're going to go out there and we're going to hire somebody as a consultant. Government folks love their consultants.
Have that person talk to us to analyze our department and then talk to us about what we need, what the best practices are.
What the best practices are? Just to tell people what's going on. You are overcomplicating the heck out of this. I mean, Kamala Harris would be proud of this word salad.
We need to build that trust with the community again. We need to build that trust with the media again.
Oh.
And I don't think that we are going to have a long
There's the
way to
violin.
go with that as long as we are open and transparent and willing to have those tough conversations and give them the time and the space and the place to give us a critical critique of what we're doing. Everything,
What was that?
The media's trust, she says.
Yeah.
What, they're not printing your press release verbatim now? They're actually editing it? Come on.
Asking some follow-ups. This is absurd. So that was Kimiko Gilmore. She's the front runner to be the next city manager. Her interview from last week at City Hall. Mario Vasquez, who I keep wanting to call Mario Lopez. I'm not going to do it, though. Mario Vasquez, who, from what I'm hearing behind the scenes, actually did very well in his one-on-one interviews with members of the city council. A lot of people are starting to like him. He was very nervous in his interview. And he was asked the same question. Hey, transparency at the city level, what are you going to do about it?
but how would you work to reform a city department that has lost public trust, and we know specifically the challenges that we have right now? How would you work to reform and rebuild public trust for the city?
Well, I think we need to set up expectations. The number one role of communications is to provide truthful and accurate information about what's going on with the city, whatever that might be. I know there are times where the news that we have to deliver may not be the news that we want to deliver, but that is what it is. And we cannot hide from it. We cannot, the cover-up is worse than the lie.
All right, good. Stop now.
So
Stop.
you cannot hide from those things. You need to present
Good.
them for what they are, but also maybe explain how we got there.
No.
What conditions, what factors led us to the position in which we're in. Acknowledge that we had made a mistake.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm done. Guys, you're not getting paid by the word here. Okay? Just say we need to be fully transparent. I will be the point person for all communications in and out of the department. Yes, we'll have, communications people. I will work directly with them. We will go all in on transparency on behalf of the city manager's office, and we will bring the trust back to the people. Whether it's BS or not, it's a 25-second answer. That's it. Stop with the word salads. Even Kamala's out there like, whoa, take it easy there. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. This is not what you want to be hearing from your people who are potentially going to be one of your faces of the city. Remember, most people will probably know the name and maybe the face of the city manager ahead of most of the people on city council. They'll know the mayor, but after that, like Troy Schulte for years in Kansas City, Brian Platt, very known in the news scene. He's on TV all the time, radio, doing all that stuff. Most people could not pick the majority of the city council out of a lineup. They will know the mayor and they will know the city manager. And that's why you got to have somebody who can put together a couple of sentences and sound like they know what they're talking about. Mark, go ahead. You're on KCMO.
Yes, Pete. Tamika sounds a lot like Sharice Davids in her debate with Kevin Yoder. When she was asked a question, Sharice would say, "Thank you for that question." And then she's thinking the whole time what her answer is going to be.
Yeah.
So,
that's a good point there, Mark.
The same coach.
So they're both going to the school of Kamala Harris wordsmithing, huh?
That's true. That's there.
Thank you, Mark. There is a little bit of that going on. There's very few people who can do what like Quentin Lucas does, and, Obama did it very well. And that is say a lot of nothing at times, but sound really good doing it. And it's a skill. It's an art. And when you hear those who are really good at it do it, you're like, okay, that meant nothing, but it sounded good. And people that aren't good, it's very obvious when they have no skill in that department. And my message to them is a simple one. Less is more. Less is more. But I'll be finding out more this week on where the city manager race stands. But I'm telling you, there is a push inside for Kimiko Gilmore. But Mario Vasquez is coming on strong. 913-408-7957. Our studio line and our text line on KCMO Talk Radio. Kevin Keatsman Uncanceled is coming up on 95.7 FM. Kansas City is where Ryan's hanging out. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, Pete. I think Kimiko needs to bring in Bill Lumberg and get the Bobs in.
Let's get Lumberg in from Office Space. I like it. Well done there, Ryan. That's outstanding. You nailed it, buddy. You get an Office Space reference on the show, and you go to the top of the list. Although our caller of the day, based on the rules, cannot come after 9 a.m. If not, Ryan would be in a very good spot. Nice job there, buddy. Very nice job. We'll get to our caller of the day in 15 minutes on KCMO Talk Radio. Do not miss that. Coming up next, electric scooters. How bad is it in parts of Kansas City? What issues are you noticing with these electric scooters? We'll get to it on 95.7 FM. We're always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. And, of course, if you miss anything from the show, you can find it on the podcast, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. The electric scooter drama is next.
If it's happening in KCMO, it's on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's Pete Mundo.
The blind squirrel finds the nut once in a while. Kansas City Star letter to the editor from yesterday. Electric scooters continue to defy Kansas City bans. Pedestrians expect protection. This town can't protect people from much more violent crimes. So what makes you think that they're going to protect people from electric scooters being on sidewalks? But anyway, the letter from Isaac in Kansas City reads here, Kansas City sidewalks are under siege by electric scooters, and it's past time for serious enforcement. Despite ordinance number blah, 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 which bans motorized scooter use on sidewalks, downtown pedestrians face daily threats from riders ignoring the law. This is not a minor nuisance, it's a public safety crisis. In the Power and Light District, River Market and Crossroads, scooters speed past pedestrians, creating constant near misses and leaving vulnerable people at risk, children, older adults, and people with disabilities. One serious injury is one too many. Warnings and gentle reminders are no longer enough, writes Isaac. The city must immediately increase citations for sidewalk violations, require scooter companies to use technology-based no sidewalk riding features, and even consider impounding scooters for repeat offenses. Other cities have acted boldly to protect pedestrians. Kansas City should be no different. Isaac goes on the right, our downtown renaissance depends on safe, welcoming streets, not on sidewalks turned into dangerous obstacle courses. Let's enforce our laws and put pedestrians first. I agree with Isaac. I would be curious to know where Isaac was the last few years when, like in the summer of 2020, the Kansas City, Missouri City Council voted to make sure that the charges that were handed down towards those individuals who broke the law during the George Floyd protests were basically wiped clean. Those charges were dropped, not by a judge, not by anybody in law enforcement, but by a vote of the Kansas City, Missouri City Council because, well, they didn't like the charges because they were sympathetic to the cause. That moment in time, 5 years later, we're still paying for. We are paying for it in very serious ways, like record levels of homicides the last couple of years in Kansas City. We are paying for it with increases in property crimes. Just look at Waldo, Exhibit A last week, where they had, people firing guns on the side of homes as they were trying to steal vehicles. You've seen it when it comes to law enforcement resigning at record rates in this town, down 400 cops from where we need to be. You've seen it in just petty theft down on the plaza. I was talking to somebody whose daughter is a manager down on the plaza. And he said in his 25 years in this town, didn't grow up here, but he's worked here for a long time. He's never seen it like this. And he says the stories that she comes back with, he's concerned for her well-being being down there as a manager on the plaza. That's how bad it is. And yes, that will filter on down to sideshows and guys in ATVs running over cops. And yes, guys in scooters on the sidewalks. When you set the precedent that we will not enforce the law, and that's what this town did for a period of time, it doesn't go back to the way it was overnight. There's a lot of tentacles that come out of that result in more crime in Kansas City in this case. And sometimes that's really violent crime, and sometimes that's, hey, I'm on a scooter, and I know I can't be on the sidewalk, but I don't really care. And Kansas City doesn't have the cops anyway to do scooter enforcement, never mind serious violent criminal enforcement. So I agree with this reader and this letter to the Kansas City Star. I totally agree with it. But I will just say, some of us warned you. I hate to say I told you so, and it wasn't just me, but we told you so. And now this is kind of nonsense that too many people in Kansas City have to deal with. Our caller of the day is coming up next on a target for Doge in Kansas City on KCMO.
Hey, it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
Our friends over at Woke 41 always giving us some material to work with here on a Monday morning. Glad you're making it here on KCMO Talk Radio. So, Channel 41 over the weekend, writing about Powell Gardens, set to pause certain programs after the loss of a federal grant. They write here, a wave of federal funding cuts from the Trump administration is being felt across the Kansas City area, this time impacting Powell Gardens. Remind the audience, John, Mark, have you been to Powell Gardens before?
I have not.
All right.
No.
All right. That's an 0 for 3 here on KCMO. What about Keatsman?
Mm-hmm.
He said he has.
He's been.
All right. Well, one of us was bound to
You
be
work
there.
in TV news, so you got to go places.
Yeah.
He said his niece got married there.
Sounds beautiful. Sounds like a great way to fund Powell Gardens away from the federal government. That's what it sounds like to me. More weddings. How about that? There's a novel concept. So Channel 41 did this big piece saying Doge is coming after Powell Gardens, and here is what that sounded like.
So the grant paid for things like HR support, safety training, community outreach, behind-the-scenes work that visitors don't see. But CEO Cody Jolliffe says visitors will still notice changes. So fewer staff, maybe fewer programs, special events, a lot of the work that they say makes Powell Gardens visitor-ready.
A lot of the things that makes a cultural organization great that people don't see that has to happen every day. So it's not the paint, it's not the beautiful flowers, it's the things that are harder to get funded.
Another problem is that Powell Gardens' budget is set years in advance. So without those federal dollars, they expect they'll have to cut back on programs that the grant was supposed to fund. And when I spoke to those leaders there, they said they really right now just want people to know how this is impacting, know that they need the community's help and really the ways that they'll see this hurt them.
All right. So they need the community's help, which means that more people can go to Powell Gardens, like in a free market economy. You can choose to go to Powell Gardens and pay your ticket to enter and look at the butterflies. You can do what, Keatsman's niece did, and that is go get married at Powell Gardens and make sure that that is high up on your list. You can do all of those things. But when you're $36 trillion in debt saying, hey, government, give me my money for Powell Gardens, it's not how it works. And this led to our caller of the day on KCMO Talk Radio.
It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day on KCMO Talk Radio, now on FM at 95.7.
Jim's out east. Go ahead, Jim. You're on KCMO. What's up, buddy?
Well, Pete, did I hear you right that they've already received half of it? So we're not looking at $200,000 being cut. We're only to $105,000 or so.
Yeah, true. It's $217,000 over 2 years. And they got 1 year of funding. So they got, like you said, about, $108,000, give or take.
So we're not looking at $200,000 cut.
Correct. Good point. Excellent early morning Monday analysis there, Jim. Nice job, buddy.
All right, Pete.
Hey,
have a good day.
You got it. You got it, bro. Well done. That's outstanding.
Here.
Jim nailed it. Yes, a $217,000 grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, IMLS, which was dispersed over 2 years after receiving just 1 year of funding. That grant was pulled. So I want to add something here that the Director of Development, Sharon Ramsey, told Woke 41 that did not make the video package. She says here, a lot of people think that we receive public funding, but we do not receive any tax dollars. So we rely solely on dollars coming from admissions, membership, and from donations from individuals and grants like the IMLS grant that we have applied for. The IMLS grant, which, as I noted, is the Institute of Museum and Library Services, is largely funded by the federal government. It's imls.gov. I'm reading their website here. Federal funding is the main source of support for the IMLS grants and programs. So it is funded by the government. For that individual, for Sharon to note here at Powell Gardens that, we're not receiving tax dollars. You are receiving tax dollars just in an indirect way through a grant. It's still our money is what's going on here.
And some callers have pointed out there are private grants. Which is fine, but those wouldn't be under threat then, would they?
No, of course.
Those wouldn't be under Doge's concern.
Of course not. No.
So, yeah, you get private grants, but that's not going to be cut.
Of course not. No, Doge cannot go after private grant money. I know it's a surprise maybe to some of you.
Talk about a bombshell.
No, they can't do that. All right. Doge is looking at the way the government has been spending money. So for Sharon Ramsey to be like, oh, we don't get tax dollars. Yes, you do. Stop. Do not pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. Just be honest and tell us why this is vital to Kansas City and it should be a vital priority of the federal government. Lay it out, but don't be like, we don't get tax dollars. You do. I mean, the federal government doesn't operate without our tax dollars. And when you're $36 trillion in debt, yeah, everything should get a look. Everything from grants being given to Powell Gardens. And I'm still confused as to how grants to Powell Gardens would be under the Institute of Museum and Library Services. I don't get it. I admit I don't understand it. I don't get it. But that's how we've gotten to the point where our government is running $2 trillion annual deficits and is $36 trillion in debt. So go figure. But that's, of course, where we find ourselves right now. Now, speaking of what's going on at the federal government, did you hear what Donald Trump said yesterday? He is a really bad dictator. He sucks at this whole dictator thing. He really does. So Trump was asked by Kristen Welker, Meet the Press, yesterday in the big sit-down interview that got a lot of headlines yesterday about running for a third term. You know, they've got these Trump 2028 hats that are being sold now. Media's melting down. It's all a troll job. That's what it is. So Trump was asked by Kristen Welker about running for a third term, and here's what he said.
The Trump organization is selling hats that say Trump 2028.
Yeah.
Are you seriously considering a third term, Mr. President, even though it's prohibited by the Constitution? Or is this about staying politically viable?
I will say this. So many people want me to do it. I have never had requests so strong as that. But it's something that, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do. I don't know if that's constitutional that they're not allowing you to do it or anything else, but there are many people selling the 2028 hat. But this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody.
Only Trump frames it that way. The people are begging me. They want me to do it. Oh, I've never gotten so many requests, Kristen, as to run for a third term in 2028. You wouldn't believe the requests I'm getting, Kristen. But I won't do it. I don't believe I can. I just want to have a banger 4 years here and hand off the reins. Okay. So then who's he want to hand off the reins to? Who's the person? Who's his go-to? Well, he commented on that.
I know that you are only 100 days in, but as we sit here today, who do you see as your successor, Mr. President?
Well, it's far too early to say that, but I do have a vice president, and typically it would be, and JD's doing a fantastic job.
He would be at the top of the list?
It could very well be. I don't want to get involved in that. I think he's a fantastic, brilliant guy. Marco is great. There's a lot of them that are great. I also see tremendous unity. But certainly you would say that somebody's the VP. If that person is outstanding, I guess that person would have an advantage. But I think the other people would all stay in unbelievably high positions. But, it could be that he'd be challenged by somebody. We have a lot of good people in this party.
And that's the message. This bench is very deep. Very deep. But yes, JD deserves to be the front runner, head and shoulders above the rest, John.
Minus points again for the dictator, though.
I know.
No, the answer is Donald Jr., Ivanka, Barron. I'm going to let them fight it out to be the next.
Because I'm a king, and I will be a dictator.
That's how you do it in North Korea, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a great point. Boy, he's failed at this whole dictator thing. He stinks at it. Gosh, what are they going to lean on next? Where are they going with this whole deal? There's got to be something else when it comes to dictator Trump they can lean into, because he really did a bad job as a dictator yesterday in that Meet the Press interview. But I'm good with that. The only people whose names were mentioned there, JD and Marco, a lot of credit there. And they should be at the top of the list. But really, it's JD's to lose. Let's be honest. It's JD's to lose. Coming up, it's Cinco de Mayo here in Kansas City. And what are our friends at the now defunded National Panhandler Radio doing and writing about on Cinco de Mayo? Oh, you're going to love it. To wrap up the show, coming up next.
You're listening to Mundo in the Morning on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM.
Well, Cinco de Mayo today. You boys going to have that one Corona a year? Maybe have a taco or something like that? What are you doing, John, to celebrate? Mark, how about you, man? What do you guys got going on there?
Yeah, I'm hoping to at least have one beverage, maybe a taco or two later.
All right.
Taco Monday.
That a boy. How about
It's Taco Monday at El Porto.
Oh, very nice.
Mhm.
Very nice.
Usually it's Taco Tuesday everywhere, so it's 2 days. You get the bang for the buck. So I'm celebrating today and tomorrow.
I expected that out of you, John.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of learned my lesson not going out for Cinco de Mayo to a Mexican joint. We tried that takeout. I think it was the COVID year of 2020. And I must have waited an hour and a half for the food. I mean, it was tough times, obviously, during COVID, but I'm like, never again. I love Mexican food. I just can't go out for it on Cinco de Mayo. It's too cliche. It takes forever. It's a zoo. I got 3 little kids. My life's a big enough zoo. I'm not going to do it. But at KCUR, here was their headline piece this morning. KCK Latinos rally at Cinco de Mayo celebration. We are here to stay. Okay, and if you're an American citizen, we're glad to have you. And if you're on a legal pathway to citizenship, we are glad to have you. That's not controversial. But KCUR, man, they can't fund this operation fast enough. Let's go, Trump. Let's go. Let's get it going here, buddy.
I'm not worth your McDonald's money?
No. Nope. NPR's not. They write here, hundreds of people gathered Sunday at Bethany Park in KCK for the Central Avenue Betterment Association's annual Cinco de Mayo celebration. For the past several years, the event had been a chance for Mexican residents of the Kansas City Metro to celebrate their culture and share it with others outside of their communities. This year, however, as the article turns very dark, the Trump administration's extreme shifts in immigration policy and enforcement have sown growing fears of detention by ICE among the area's Latino population, making many afraid to attend public events. So remember this, the largest demographic shift in this country in the November election when it comes to racial components was Hispanics moving to the right by like double digits to the right. So let's have woke KCUR write a story here about how the Trump administration's extreme fears in immigration policy and enforcement is leading now to some people not attending public events in certain communities. Well, if they are illegal, then that would probably be a smart move on their part. That's a very fair point. I actually heard from a KCK cop, about a month ago. Kate and I were out to dinner with a couple, and he's a KCK cop, and he said, we've actually gotten less calls from certain parts of town because there is concern amongst those who are not here legally that they will find themselves in further trouble. So there have been fewer calls from some of these neighborhoods in KCK, and I'm sure that's true in other parts of the region as well. I get it. But this has nothing to do with celebrating Cinco de Mayo, which largely is more of an American deal than it is like a truly Mexican deal. But either way, happy to celebrate the Mexican brand in America on Cinco de Mayo and support your favorite Mexican restaurant. But of course, National Panhandler Radio and KCUR here in Kansas City can't help itself but somehow make Cinco de Mayo an anti-Trump thing, as this issue remains of all his policies actually the one that he pulls the highest on. So they go on to talk to people in this piece who are, saying, hey, we're here, we're invested in the community. That's great. We want you to love Kansas City. We want you to love America. And you can also celebrate Cinco de Mayo. It doesn't change the fact that people want you to come here legally, as there are millions of people around the world who are willing to and want to do it the legal way, and you don't get to cut the line. That's not an anti-Mexican thing. That's not an anti-Cinco de Mayo thing. That's really got nothing to do with Trump because the issue polls very well for him. But it is also very much on brand for KCUR to take this approach. The last line I'll read you here on this article, The speakers largely focused on the resilience of the area's large Mexican-American community in the face of a more hostile political climate. Goodness, I mean, you got to be stop. Come on, man. You got to be kidding me, John.
Shows you where their head is.
Yeah, yeah.
Not every illegal immigrant is a Mexican. We've got Chinese, Iranian. We got people coming across the border, but they tend to focus on one group.
Yeah, they do. You're right. It's not even largely Mexican anymore, right? Plenty of South
Venezuela,
Americans.
et cetera, et cetera.
Central Americans. You're right. Africa, Far East. I mean, it's across the board.
They're coming across the southern border, not from the south. They're coming because it's the most open. Canada didn't let them in.
Yeah, that's true. No doubt about it.
Well,
man.
they still do come through there, but not as many, clearly.
Not as much.
Bad hombres.
No, absolutely not. You're right. So with that, if you're going out today, give yourself plenty of time. Enjoy Cinco de Mayo. Have that one Corona a year. And enjoy some tacos or some quesadillas or whatever you're going to have today. And you know what else you got to do is make sure that you are registered and RSVP'd and buy your tickets now for the Guy Benson event that we've got coming up in 5 weeks to the day. That's right, June 12th. We are going to be out with Guy Benson, Boulevard Brewing, and their sweet dinner, drinks, meet and greet, show, the whole deal. And the majority of the tickets are gone. So get your tickets now, KCMOTalkRadio.com, with our own Guy Benson from Fox News and the Afternoon Drive host here on KCMO, coming to Kansas City on June 12th. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.